Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a bright, beautiful winter's day. As you can see, the sun is shining and the weather is absolutely perfect. There's a little bit of a breeze, so it's not too hot, and it's the perfect conditions to be out on a safari. And hopefully we're going to have lots and lots of luck. But before we get into all the things that we're going to be doing this afternoon, I need to tell you who I am. My name is Tristan. On camera, I've got David this afternoon. Hello, David. And it is a very, very warm welcome, particularly to our kids that are joining us this afternoon. This first 45 minutes is dedicated to all of you guys, and so we'd love to hear from you. Remember, you can use kids questions at wildearth.tv if you want to ask any questions, and we'll try and answer as many as possible. Oh, there's some animals in front. Also, we need to say a very, 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 very big thank you to Julie Schumann. She lives in New England and she sponsored our drive today. It's really kind of you to have done that, and you say that you've been watching for 3 years. It's been a good 3 years. I must be honest, we've had lots and lots of amazing things in the last 3 years, so hopefully you've really enjoyed it. And you say that you work in aviation and you're planning on traveling and visiting South Africa for the first time next year, if everything, goes according to plan, and the changes, that need to happen in terms of the world travel as it is at the moment. But it's lovely to have you all with us. As you can see, there's a few little antelope milling around, so some kudu and some impalas. You can see the difference between the two quite nicely now, because the impala is walking in front. Now that impala in front, while it's not a big male, is pretty much fully grown. But you can see that it's only the size of the little baby kudus, so it gives you an idea of just how much bigger the kudus are when they're fully grown by the females that you see over there. Okay, we're going to try and see if we can find 2 leopards that were walking all over this area this morning. But while we do that, we're going to send you to Swalu Kalahari and Dylan so that he can say good afternoon to all of you.
So welcome back to Swalu Kalahari. My name is Dylan, for those of you who haven't joined us yet, and Jean-Andre, my trusty steed cameraman, there he is. This afternoon we're going to start briefly with something quite interesting on this tree over here. This tree is called a camel thorn tree. It's one of the more commonly encountered species in the area, and they actually get very, very big sometimes. You can get these trees up to 30 meters, 20 meters tall, depending on what environment you're in. On Swallow, they tend to be a lot smaller. But I'll chat about the trees at another point. But what's interesting, as we drove past, we just happened to notice there are these funny little white blotches all over these branches. I'm just going to pop on the other side there. And I'm assuming those are the ones you focused on, Jean-Andre?
Yeah.
Okay. These tiny little white blotches, and if you look carefully, you'll actually see there's ants on top of those little white blotches. I'm just going to put my finger there so you can see him move. There you go, there's another one. Whoop, you see how that little ant puts his abdomen up? So these white blotches are actually called scale insects, and they're actually feeding off the sap of this tree. And as they feed, they're actually excreting a lot of the products that they're not using, okay? And that's actually got quite a sweet taste to it, which then attracts the ants, okay? So these ants, they don't need the scale insects. The scale insects don't need the ants, but it's actually working really, really well together. So this is a nice example of mutualism where they, it's actually called myrmecophily, where the scale insects actually deriving benefit because of the ants. Murmur refers to ants. So this is pretty cool. So these little guys, so obviously any potential predator on these scale insects is going to come along, and what they're going to have to deal with, apart from spines and then on the tree, is a whole lot of little ants. And they're called cocktail ants. Not because you can drink them, but if you see how they just cock their abdomen up like that. And so this is pretty cool to see this. And actually, it's not something that we encounter too commonly on the trees. Not the ants are super common, and they form a lot of big colonies on these trees. If you come in here, you'll see these holes over here. Here's ants walking along here, and holes like this. Go in there. I saw an ant coming out that hole. There you go. They're going in. There we go. See them going into the hole. So that's their nest. And sorry, Jean-Andre, I'm going to interrupt you. Look at this bird left here. Sorry, guys. Can you find this bird? Look at that. Look at that. Crimson-breasted shrike. Yeah, and he's come right up to us. So those birds are predators. They'll catch, being one of the shrikes, they've actually got a little hooked bill, and they, apart from catching lots of insects and things, if he finds a chameleon, he'll eat it. If he finds a little lizard on a tree that can't get away from him, he'll gobble it. They've even been recorded going for other nestling birds. So I think he saw us shuffling around here and he thought, or maybe we'll flush something out for him. That was really cool to see. But anyway, so with these ants, they form these, you get any kind of borer. It could be any kind of wood borer gets into the tree, creates these holes, and then these ants actually start taking up residence. So this branch, although it's growing, it's obviously got a lot of dead wood on it. There's actually signs of it's either fungal rot on here or ash. So it could have had a fire through a long, long time ago. But now these ants have now taken over these holes and they've got a nest. So you find these ants frequently nesting in trees, and not just these, are a number of different kinds. But the scale insects actually aren't that frequently encountered out here. So that's pretty cool to see that. And yeah, that's a fun start to our drive. No leopards, elephants, buffalo, lion yet, but we're working on it. But this afternoon, Jean-Andre and I, we're going to try. It's quite a warm day, but as it gets cooler, we're going to try push for aardvark. But while we're pondering the beauty of scale insects and ants, I think let's head over to Steve at Njuma and see what they're after.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to my vehicle. My name is Steve, indeed joined by BK once again, and we are very excited to have you with us. Boys and girls, jump on board, send your questions as you've been asked to do, and we're going to see if we can find a pair of leopards that was hanging around this morning. We spent all morning trying to track them, and now hopefully we'll be able to pick up on their tracks. Because the tracks went everywhere. Now, if you're not sure what I mean by tracks, it's basically footprints in the sand. Animals can be sneaky, but they leave behind signs, and that is what we look for when we look for them. So I'm working with Tristan again this afternoon to see if we can find them, because it would be very, very cool to find this leopardess with her boyfriend, to see what they're going to get up to for you this afternoon. Are you excited? I certainly am. Chances are they won't have moved much, but when leopards come together in a relationship, they move more than they would if they were on their own. Not distance-wise, but she gets up and moves a bit and he follows. So it's a constant thing. And so we might have chance of them coming out into an area you might see them, and maybe their tracks will be on top of our vehicle tracks from this morning. We'll be able to figure out exactly where they've come from or gone to. So that's our plan for now, and if that doesn't work immediately, then we'll come back after dark. So kids, don't forget you can send your questions to kidsquestions@wildearth.tv. Hopefully we can get them answered for you. Obviously your questions are important. A lovely afternoon for a bumble. We'll look out for some birds as well. There's always birds, no matter what you do on Game Drive, there's always birds, and a good pair of binoculars is definitely something that if you've ever been on safari before or want to go on safari, a good pair of binoculars is an absolute must. Rather spend a little bit more than buy the cheapest things you can come across. My last binoculars I had for 15 years. and I eventually upgraded again. I've had these for about 4 years now, so it's a very long period of time. And you don't only bird with them, you can also use them for looking for animals. So if you're far away in some of our big reserves like the Kruger National Park and you want to see animals, you can use binoculars to spy them. In the Masai Mara up in Kenya, binoculars is what provided us with most of the animals that we have up there. Okay, we're going to keep searching here for some tracks. Unfortunately, I won't use my binoculars for the tracks, but Tristan's looking for some tracks too. He's just down the road. Let's jump over there.
No, you can't use your binoculars for tracks, Steve. Otherwise, you're not going to see much, and you're probably going to get very, very sick if you try and look for tracks using binoculars, particularly if you're driving, because the binoculars are going to bounce all over the place and you're going to feel like you're on a roller coaster and not feel very well at all. But we've been trying to see if we can find any leopard tracks. So basically last night there was a male and female leopard. The male is called Mulawati and the female Shadulu, and they were together. They chased each other around all night. There was lots of sawing, so that's when they vocalize, and they make this big rasping call, and then they've joined together. Now we think that's because they're going to be trying to make cubs. And so what's happening is that they've walked all over the reserve, and their tracks are pretty much everywhere. And so we were trying this morning really hard to find where these guys went. But because they had walked on every single road and they'd gone north and south and east and west and pretty much everywhere, it was quite tricky to figure out where they went, and we didn't find them. So this afternoon what I'm doing is I'm just driving all the same roads that I drove this morning in the hope that if they were somewhere where we missed them, that they've now walked over where I drove, and then I know that those tracks are fresh. If they haven't done that, then I'm going to have to kind of go to where I last think there was some tracks, and try and see if I can track them down that way. But that's going to be quite tricky. It's not going to be easy because we've driven over a lot of the tracks, and when you drive over tracks, obviously then they're not visible anymore, and so it can make life a little bit tricky. But if they are mating, what I'm hoping is that this evening or this afternoon, now that it's going to start cooling down, we'll start to hear them, because when they mate, they make a lot of noise, and they'll growl, and they will sort of bellow and hiss at each other, and so you can hear it from quite a long way away, and hopefully that will lead us to them, if that's the case. So fingers crossed, that's the plan. I hope we'll have a little bit of luck. But I did see some tracks for some buffalo in this area, so I might let Steve know, because they're heading towards where Steve is. While I'm seeing little spotted carnivores.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Ambion Pinda Private Game Reserve. My name is Jared Dupree, and behind the camera we have Marcel. Wow, what a way to start off the afternoon. Kids, look what we've managed to find. Some cheetah kitties for you. So we have a female cheetah who is feeding on what looks like an inyala that she must have killed this morning. And we've just managed to count 3 cubs, everyone. Now, I can't even describe to you how happy and excited I am. This is my very first time seeing these cubs. They were only discovered about 2 or 3 weeks ago by one of the guides in this area. And I haven't been able to get here. And we got good news from one of the rangers who was in this area that he found this female with her 3 cubs. What a treat. So we're not 100% sure the exact age. Like I said, we have only just discovered them. But if we're having a look at the fact that they're eating meat, the amount of silver that they have running down their back and their spine, and the size that they are, we suspect they're probably close to about 3 months. If anything, a little bit younger than that, but maybe around 3 months. So as we arrived, we had 3 of the cubs busy feeding, and now it seems that the 2 have wandered off. They've had enough, and the mother's taking the advantage now of the cubs not feeding. you'll notice how she's using the side of her teeth, known as carnassial shears, and those act like scissors. And so she'll be cutting away at the meat with those carnassial shears, with those scissors that she has in her jaw, and then pulling the meat with her canines. How beautiful. Oh, there was obviously a little bit of interaction there between the two youngsters. You'll notice as she feeds, she keeps looking around. She doesn't... Ooh, she's just stood up. I wonder if she's going to come and lie on the road. So you'll see a nice and full belly. The fact that she doesn't have any blood on her at the moment would tell me that this is not a fresh carcass, and probably a carcass from this morning. Oh, I don't know if you could hear that. She just grunted and groaned as she lay down. She just lay on that full belly, and all that pressure went onto her lungs. And she went, oh. And while she's busy taking a rest, the one youngster seems like it's taking advantage of mom not being around, and he's trying to feed as much as it can. Now, at this age, their teeth aren't very strong, or sharp, shall I rather say. Their carnassial shears aren't very sharp, and so it is a bit of a battle for them to feed. So what they will do is that they'll wait for their mother to open up the carcass, make it easy for them to feed by exposing that meat, and then the areas where she has fed and maybe sort of cut away at the meat already is the areas where they'll take over and feed from. This is incredible. What a way to start off the afternoon. Alright, so apparently Dylan at Swalu has something that looks like a unicorn. Not quite sure what that is. So let's head over to Swalu and see what he has.
I'm very chuffed that we got this little one. It's our smallest antelope that we get. It's called a steenbuck. A steenbuck, or actually, more correctly, a steenbok. Bok is the old Afrikaans or Dutch word for an antelope. And in all the books, text was actually steenbok. Steen refers to the color. It's a lovely rich red color. But these are gorgeous little animals. And as we're going along, I'm actually going to look for one of their dropping sites, where they've gone to their ablutions, because it's quite cool the way they'll dig or they'll defecate, and then actually just in front of it they'll dig with their front hooves, and they actually kick sand over the droppings. So it's very, very, very distinctive, and there's a couple of different theories as to why they do that. But if I find one of those, we can chat about that. But this is our smallest species of antelope that occurs on the reserve, and an important prey item for your small and medium-sized predators like caracal. Some people call them lynx. Very different to the lynx in the States and Europe. Cheetah. I think cheetah catch a lot of these. And pack hunting animals like wild dogs will catch a lot of these. So they're super common on the ground, the steenbuck. It's amazing to see this one with a broken horn. The females don't have any horns. So a lot of our antelope here, it's only the males that have got horns, and the females don't. But there's a handful of others where both sexes have horns. But this one's obviously lost one somewhere. A unibuck. That was Jeandra's name, by the way, just so you know. A steen unibuck. It's a lovely sighting. And it is now South African time, 3:20 in the afternoon. And it's still quite hot. And you can actually see that these small antelope are still lying up in the shade. When we approach this area, just from seeing the scale insects just now, he actually came trotting out from behind some bushes on our left-hand side. Just trotted into the shade of this, watched us a couple of minutes, and then lay down. So it is still quite warm out here, which doesn't bode too well for my plan of trying to find an aardvark for us. but I'm not going to give up, that's for sure. Look at those ears, eh? Super, super, super alert. Those of you who joined us with the meerkats this morning, you just see that constant vigilance, eh? Nothing out here, you know, it doesn't matter when they're lying down, resting, you know, they always have some heightened, you know, degree of vigilance. And of course, the hearing is ridiculously better compared to ours. Well, definitely according to mine. He hasn't taken his eyes off us since we've been here. He hasn't moved his head in a different direction. His ears haven't twitched. He's completely focused on us. We touched on it very, very briefly the other day. If you look at the shape of antelope horns, a lot of the antelope that have got very fancy horns, something like a kudu, you know, with those big spiral, almost corkscrew shaped horns, those are often more for display, and they'll you know, tussle with each other every now and again, but they're more for display. Antelope like this, where they got these super straight horns, they're not going to get locked with, you know, with another set of horns whatsoever. So these are designed for fighting. And the oryx, or gemsbok as we call it, also long, super straight horns. Places like Pinda, where our colleagues are down there with Nyala, they've got those also very, very straight horns, slight curve to them, designed for fighting. So I think we're going to leave this gentleman resting up a little bit, and we're going to head on and see if we can pick up some aardvark tracks as it starts getting cooler. But in the meantime, I think head over to Ngala and see what they got down that side.
Okay, good afternoon everybody. Welcome back to and beyond Ngala. So you're again with myself, Sean. We still got OD behind the camera, and it seems like we're off to a banging of an afternoon. See, I hear and beyond Pinda got some cheetahs feeding, even some cheetah cubs. Very exciting. We are also on the trail of some cheetahs. Now, we had reports yesterday that 2 cheetahs were moving into Ngala from our eastern boundary. So we have just been driving along the boundary, and now we started looping back around into the middle. We haven't seen anything, any signs, any tracks, anything fresh of these cheetahs. So, you know, they might be in, they might not be. That did happen yesterday. So it could be they came in, did a little bit of hunting yesterday, and then they moved off last night already. Or they just came for some water. I don't know, but we thought it was worth investigating. This is a fantastic area, as you can see. Very open, very flat, just that rolling hill, absolutely beautiful. Perfect place for cheetahs. I'm just having a scan there on the hill opposite us. Trying to see maybe some elephants or giraffe, but I don't see anything. It's very hot here now. I think they said something like 27 degrees, 25 degrees Celsius. So you mainly want to be looking in the shade, even for something like cheetah, who are daytime animals, in terms of most of their hunting is done in the day. But even now it's a bit hot for them. They'll be lying in the shade, relaxing, waiting another probably half an hour, 45 minutes. It will cool down quite a lot, and then they should be up and moving. But what we're trying to aim for is to find a spotted cat, be it a cheetah or a leopard. You know, I'm not too picky. Either one will suffice, you know, if we must. And spend some time with them this afternoon, and then head back towards those lions tonight, or as it's getting darker. I'm hoping they're going to roar, because if you remember from this morning, for those that were watching, we had that other pride that was roaring way out to the east, which is off that direction. And I think the Birmingham pride might roar just to, you know, just a territorial thing, especially with both Ross males there. I think we have a great chance of that happening, which should be really, really cool to watch. So we'll make our way there a little bit later. And that is my plan for the day. Just to hopefully find something else. Ooh, we had a bit of a sad story, really. But as we left the camp, there was a tawny eagle. Now you'll know the tawny eagle. Let me see if I can get you a picture. Tawny eagle, very, very big, beautiful, sort of light brown in color. It's a stunning looking bird. But anyway, this one was dead. Was lying on the ground, dead. Why? Not sure exactly. Nothing stood out. So if you can see here, if OD just zooms in there on the picture, let me just stop here. So this one over here, so I'd say it was about that big, that sort of age, and yeah, it was dead. It's quite sad, but first time I've ever seen a dead one. A lot bigger than what I thought. Very, very, very big bird. At first I thought it was a vulture. Okay, so what we're going to do though, we're going to keep driving, keep looking, searching for the spotted cat. In the meantime, we're going to send you across to Ambion Pinda, who's got their own spotted cat.
Welcome back, everyone. So in the time that you've been gone, we have been fortunate enough to have the cub come out and have a look at us. Now, two of the cubs are still lying off in the long grass, and I think it is a little bit because this is one of the first time these cubs have ever seen vehicles and people, and so they're not as used to the vehicle as what mom is. And so we've had the one come out and have a bit of a look, but the moment the other two finished feeding on that inyala, they went off to lie in the long grass. Now, that could be because of us. It could also be just complete coincidence. So, Nika from Pretoria, welcome. That's a very good question. How old do cheetah get? So in the wild, it is very difficult for a cheetah to survive because they've got so many other predators like lions, hyenas, and believe it or not, even leopards. Cheetah in the wild can get to around 12 years old. That cheetah has done very well. In captivity, they can live much longer than that, but that's because life is easy for them. But of course, we never want to see a cheetah in captivity. This is exactly where we want to see them, in the wild, doing what they are supposed to do. So you'll notice when you look at the two cheetah, we can see the mom that's closer to us. Oh, did you hear that? It sounds like a bird calling. It was just me imitating. One of the cubs was busy calling out either to the mother. There we go, you can hear it again. See how she's looking? So maybe the cub's asking mom, please come this way. I want to go feed. I want you to be nearby. Or maybe it's hoping mom will respond so it knows where the mother is. Maybe with the long grass, it can't see where the third cub is or its mother. She's starting to look like she might get up. Let's have a look. Although there is some flies busy frustrating her. You could see she was busy trying to flick off some flies. You'll notice that her ears are constantly flicking from side to side. And that's because little flies are busy landing on the tip. And that's one of the problems with having a dead animal around like this inyala, is it's going to attract flies. And so those flies that are attracted to that carcass will also come and hang around them. So like I was saying earlier, look at the color difference between these two. You'll see that the cub is much darker than the mother. Now about 2-3 months ago when that cub was born, it was almost completely black. Not quite, but almost completely black. And as it starts to get older, it will look a lot more like the mother is now. So Palakcha from India you're asking, why do cheetah cubs have silver down their back? Now, that is a very good question, and in some ways a bit of a controversial question. There is a bit of arguments to why cheetah might have that silver down their back. One of the beliefs is that it helps to imitate a honey badger. Now, whether that is the reason that they have it or not, I don't know, but that is one of the theories. And the reason why they think it will help this cub to look like a honey badger, if you know anything about a honey badger, you'll know that they're one of the most fiercest animals in the bush. And everyone is scared of a honey badger, even sometimes lions. So a cheetah cub, which is very vulnerable from lions, would want to look like a honey badger just to protect it. It could also help with the sort of silver yellow down the top of their back and on their head. It also might just help them camouflage in the yellow long grass. Which one of those reasons it is, I'm not 100% sure. I like to think it's just to help them with camouflage, but what a wonderful story it would be if it was that it made it look a little bit more like a honey badger. So you'll notice while the cubs are busy moving around in the background, the mother doesn't sleep. If you've ever seen a lion or a leopard close to a kill, they'll feed and then go sleep, not lift their head for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes, and not care about anything. But her problem is that cheetahs are very vulnerable, as I mentioned earlier. And with her having the cubs around, she's also very worried that other predators might pick up on the scent of this Inyala and that they might come over to investigate. And if they come and investigate the Inyala, they might see her or they might see the cubs. And unfortunately, if they do see the cubs, they will try and kill them. And so that's exactly why she has her head up the whole time. She's listening, looking, smelling the whole time, making sure no other predators are coming into the area. Once she is finished feeding on the Inyala and once her little babies have a nice full belly, she will take the 3 of them and she'll walk as far away from this Inyala as she can, because she knows that as the night goes on, this Inyala is going to attract other predators like hyenas, lions and leopards, and she doesn't want to be anywhere nearby to those dangerous animals. But there is still quite a bit of meat left on the Inyala, and her belly looks full, but I think that she's still got quite a bit of space left. Oh my word, those cubs are so adorable. Although you can't see them, you can most certainly hear them. They're busy playing in the background. Unfortunately, there is just too many trees and grass in the way to see them, but I do occasionally see the flick of the tail or them hurtling around the grass, and that high-pitched squeak that you can hear, or whistle, is them busy calling out to each other. So Emma, that depends on the areas that the cheetah come from. That we get cheetah in quite a few different countries in South Africa, and you'll find in some of those countries they will have antelope there that we do not have here. So in Phinda Private Game Reserve, we have lots of impala and Inyala, and female cheetahs like this one would prefer to hunt something smaller like an impala or an Inyala. Now Emma, I don't know if you watched this morning, but we were lucky enough to find 2 big male cheetah. And those 2 cheetah, because there's 2 of them and they're a little bit bigger and stronger than this female, they do sometimes hunt larger mammals like a young zebra or a wildebeest, and those 2 have actually even caught a giraffe. So male cheetah can kill much larger prey than what females can. Sometimes they do catch smaller prey like duiker or scrub hares. If you don't know what a scrub hare is, it looks a little bit like a rabbit. And so they do sometimes catch small prey like that. But this female, the majority of her diet will consist of Inyala and impala. Now that is actually quite interesting because they both live in completely different habitats. Inyalas, who eat leaves, like to live in dense areas where they can eat the leaves. And so generally you would think, cheetah only hunt in open areas, so obviously they're going to hunt only impala. Well, the cheetah and Phinda over the many years have learned to adapt in this environment, and they've actually learned to hunt a little bit like a leopard, to use their camouflage and their speed, but to hunt in the denser vegetation where we have lots and lots of Inyala. So I'm just going to ask Marcel to quickly zoom in on her paws. one of the fantastic things is when you can be this close to an animal, you've got the opportunity to get in nice and tight and completely viewed every bit of the cheetah. So have a look how long those feet are. And you might be able to see some of the claws as well. And her feet are specially designed, just like an athlete. Just like Usain Bolt, the fastest man in the world, when he's running with running shoes on, he's got studs on, and that's exactly what the feet of a cheetah are like. Those claws are always out, and the long feet and the long claws just help them to grip in. Oh my word, have a look. The 3 cubs have just come out. Isn't that just the most precious thing you have ever seen? One thing you'll notice, have a look how short the tail is in comparison to the body length. Then if you look at the tail of the mother, she's got a very long tail. And so their tail over time is just going to grow a little bit quicker than the rest of their body. So the 1 cub's come up to mom and started to groom mom, I think hoping that mom's going to groom it. There we go. You can see mom's busy. All right, everyone. So that's the 45 minutes of the kids section. I hope all you kiddies have enjoyed this cheetah sighting with us. Please don't go anywhere and keep watching for the next 2 hours or so. And we are opening the floor now to everyone to be able to ask questions. So please do flood in your questions. I'm excited to answer as many questions as I can about these 4 cheetah that we have over here.
This is the special cheetah sighting ever.
So Marcel is asking me if this is the most special cheetah sighting ever. I would say that it is probably up there with my top 5 cheetah sightings. While I'm busy talking the whole time here, I'm having a grin from ear to ear. I've spent most of my guiding career in the Sabi Sands, very close to Djuma, where we've seen lots of leopard cubs, but we've hardly ever seen cheetah there. And I've only recently come back to Pinda. And since I've been back, this is only the 2nd or 3rd time that I've had an opportunity to see cubs this age. So I am very, very happy. So yes, Marcel, this is one of my most special sightings. So see, the mother's busy grooming at the moment. She's grooming the areas of these cubs that they can't groom themselves. It's very usual for cats, after they feed on a carcass, to groom themselves to get off any bit of blood or any other matter that might have got onto their coats while feeding. And what they'll do after they groom themselves is that they'll go to other members of the group. So cheetah normally don't have other members, so you'll often find males by themselves or females by themselves. But if a female has a cub like this, she'll use that as an opportunity for them to groom her. But now she's busy grooming her little babies. And like I said, grooming them in the spots that they can't get to. Oh my word, they can't get enough of this. It's almost like they're competing for her affection. I remember that when I was a child, competing with my sisters for all the affection from my mother. You see the 1 cub's busy looking over a mom, almost listening to every single word that I'm saying. As I mentioned earlier, if you joined, that this is potentially one of the first time that these cubs have ever seen a vehicle. They were only seen for the first time about 2 weeks ago, and we've hardly seen them since. And in fact, this is the first time I have seen them. But I'm so amazed how relaxed they are. Often when animals haven't seen vehicles many times, they are quite nervous by the vehicle. But this is exactly how the process of habituation happens. The cubs will look at mom, and they'll see that mom is not scared of the vehicle. And so then they go, well, if mom's not scared of this big green thing with people inside, I don't need to be scared of it. And that's exactly why they're not running away or feeling threatened by us at all. And as the next couple of months and years go by, as we view these cubs more, you'll see that they probably won't pay any attention to us in the future. All right, so from one spotted creature, we'll head over to another spotted creature. I believe Dylan has a spotted spider.
So considering the cold weather that we had last week, I'm super pleased that we found this little one. Actually, I was going to say this little guy. It's not a guy at all. This is a little lady, actually quite a large lady, this one. This is called a garden orb weaver. Now, our colleagues down in the Lowveld, Djuma, Ngala, those Pridelands, and then up at Pinda, they've got a much broader diversity of spiders that we're currently aware of than we've got in our areas. And we've got very few large spiders out here. We've got the odd baboon spider here and there, but not that many. So this is, aside from baboon spiders, this is the largest spider species that we have on Swalu. They create these really, really big webs. Some of you may be familiar with those lovely golden strands. You know, if you've ever been with us on safari down in those areas. I'm just looking for another kind of spider that may be in here. I'm not seeing it. But yeah, so these webs are really remarkable. And I've personally seen on one occasion a small bird actually entangled in one of these webs. And the webs themselves are quite remarkable. I'm going to do my best not to disturb her. And they've got a lot of these guy ropes going out. But if you notice, I'm going to stick my finger here and you'll see it's going to actually stick on there. You see that? Oh, she's coming down, look. She's coming down. Look at her, that is gorgeous. Now she probably felt that vibration on the web. She sits there, feels the vibration. If she feels the vibration, then she'll actually run down towards it, bite the prey, and then start wrapping it up before feeding on it. But what I want to demonstrate there, and you saw a little bit how that web was sticking to my finger. You see that? There you go. And it's not because my fingers are as rough as a dinosaur's, which they are. But these threads are what we call heckled. So they actually, if you look at them under a microscope, they very, very rough and fluffy. It's almost like a piece of wool. So they're not sticky, rather than just having a lot of space for things to get gripped on. Especially if you're a little insect or something that flies into you, and you'll get tangled up very easily. But I'm going to show you another kind of thread that she's got, that the guy ropes, all the main strands are made from. And if you look at this one here, it's a bit difficult to see where my finger is. You see my finger can actually run on there. It doesn't stick at all. So these are the very strong anchor threads that they use. So spiders can spin a variety of different kinds of silk depending on what the use for that silk is going to be. She is such a beautiful, beautiful spider. And Jandra and I are both quite surprised that after that super cold spell that we had last week, she's actually even still around. A cold spell like that is not great for insect life. I'm not saying she's an insect. She's an arachnid, for those of you who just wanted to point that out there. Your arachnids, spiders, scorpions, things like that with 8 legs. But she's obviously just hanging at the top there, hoping for a prey item to come in. This is so cool that she's still out and about. I'm just trying to... the head of a toothbrush, a standard toothbrush, that's about that kind of length. That's the body length of that spider, is like roughly about the head of your toothbrush size, give or take. So yeah, I think let's leave her to have some happy hunting, and I really hope she does get something. And I think in the meantime, head over to Taylor and see what she's got on that side. Enjoy.
Everybody, and welcome to Pridelands here at Eco Training. We're sitting with a huge herd of elephants. My name is Taylor, and on camera with me today is Gert. I'm hoping that you can hear me. Can you hear me? But we've just been with this entire herd of elephants. I'm trying to not move too much. And they've been sleeping. They've literally just started waking up in the last couple of minutes, which is awesome, awesome, awesome. We're so lucky. Can you hear them all breathing heavily? Can you hear them rustling through the leaves? How amazing is those? sounds. You could hear that one elephant, she shook her head at us. There are quite a few cows here that have got little babies, so they are going to be quite protective over them, but they're very relaxed. Like I said, for the last 10 minutes or so, they've been sound asleep. Some of them even laying flat on the floor, but they've all stood up now. Hello, big girl. You can hear them rumbling and all talking with one another. I bet somebody is saying, right, I'm thirsty, it's time for a drink. So I'm hoping that we can follow this herd of elephants. Oh, look at those two little calves coming out now. They were fast asleep. They were right down on the ground. But I'm so happy that we've been able to join you this afternoon. So you can still see them trying to learn how to use their trunks every now and then, pulling up a piece of grass. Not as much as I think they were hoping for. And chewing away. But it won't be too long before they have a drink, or maybe they snuck a drink while I wasn't watching them. But they're just in the middle. Look at all those tall legs surrounding them. You can hear all those rumbles. So that's how elephants normally will talk to one another, is through infrasounds, which is normally very low frequencies that we can't hear, and then those rumbles. Trumpeting is not normally a very, very nice sound. They'll do it to intimidate other animals, and then of course when a little one is throwing a tantrum, they definitely let off a trumpet. Now, Sean from Johannesburg, South Africa, you've inquired about if any animals will drink from the seep lines. Potentially, if there's any water around, but at this time of the year, coming into winter, typically we don't have any water around. Most of the mud wallows or natural pans that would have filled up during the course of the summer months have already dried out. Gert, can we look at this elephant over here? I think this is a leucistic elephant. Can you see that one? Look how interesting this is. I'm just watching all the elephants around me, but I've just noticed it might be a bit difficult for you to see. I'm so sorry, Sean, that I've cut your question short. There's a slight pink pigmentation to the eyes, and you can particularly see it when it flaps its ears quite a bit too. But look at that. And it's almost got golden eyes, just like the leucistic lions at Ngala. This is so cool. I don't think I've ever seen an elephant with leucism. Now, if you're wondering what leucism is, not the same as being an albino. So that means that you've lost all the melanin pigment, which normally brings out the blacks and browns and colorations. But this means that they can still retain their normal coloration, but they might just have lighter eyes, they might have sort of patchy skin. But it's like if you get a leucistic leopard, for example, or strawberry leopards, they're much lighter in color, but you can still see that they've got spots. And maybe the guides at Ngala will be able to find the Birmingham Pride, which has got leucistic lions, and they can show you how even their little black patches on the back of the ears are still there. They're just not very dark. They're not black like a normal lion. But this is super special, and it's a young bull. This is awesome to see. I hope that we get to see this elephant for quite some time. Very special. Oh, there's a cheeky friend coming through. Oi, don't worry. We'll still look at you even though you don't have any special colorations on you. It's his buddy, obviously. Two boys back together. Isn't that precious? It's also very pretty with all the dust that they're kicking around. And now, as young boys do, they might have a bit of a rough and tumble and push themselves around. So, Sean, just going back to your question, I'm hoping elephants are going to go towards a dam called the Ndlovu Dam, which is right next to the Eek. They normally swim there all the time. Oi, settle down, young lads. Yeah, sit. Becoming a little bit boisterous. You can see how the boys have all ganged up with one another. This is very typical to see. I wish you were all owls sitting with me on this safari, aren't you? But just being in this car surrounded by these animals is just, it's the most therapeutic thing that you can experience, in my opinion, on safari. Oh, now we're going to have all the boys come around. Now, you don't have to worry. I know they are quite close to the vehicle, but they are very, very relaxed with us. We've been sitting with them for ages, so they're starting to wake up. They're going to decide on their movement. These young boys, these young bulls have pushed on through now, and you can see the cows are already starting to move off with the calves. Not because that they're scared of them, but just they can be a bit bossy and a bit annoying. This is so sweet. Wonderful. I think I'm going to stick with the herd if I can this afternoon and see if off you go to Phinda, where it seems as though the situation is calm.
Welcome back, everyone. So in that time that they've been filming the wonderful elephants busy fighting, we just had a quick look at our database because I was unsure of which female this actually is and her age. And what is very exciting is that this is a very young female. She's just under 3 years old. So this is her very first litter. And she's actually doing a fairly good job for her first litter. So although we saw 3 now, we do think that she gave birth to 4, because when we did see her, or when she was seen 2 weeks ago, there was 4 of them. But unfortunately at the moment there is only 3. Now that doesn't mean that the 4th one has been killed. Sometimes they do get separated. We have seen it before. A cheetah that we had early on in the year, we still have, but a cheetah that we saw early on in the year at one stage lost 2 of her cubs, and about 6 days later she managed to find them. And sometimes what will happen is when a predator like a leopard or lion comes in and chases them, the cubs scatter in all direction and might get lost for a couple of days, and while she's busy walking around calling out to them and finding them, it might take her a while to find them again. So maybe that's what happened. Let's cross our fingers and hope that that 4th cub is just lost. But unfortunately it is a very usual happening with cheetah, is that they don't have a very rate with the cubs. Sorry, I was laughing there not because of the success rate, just because of those 2 cubs, or the one cub busy stepping on top of the other cub and almost saying, come on, let's play, don't lie down, I know you got a full belly, don't be lazy. Not getting any response from its sibling, and so it's going to head off now to its mother. Now you'll notice that I say it instead of he or she. At this age it is very, very difficult to be able to sex a cheetah. So you would have to look between the legs, just below the tail, to see if they have what looks like raisins, little golden raisins. But even at this age those testicles are so small that often we think we know what sex it is and we get it wrong. Around closer to probably about 5-6 months, those testicles should be large enough for us to be able to confidently confirm whether it is a male or female. But we do hope that all 3 of these youngsters are females, because the more females we have, the more cubs we're going to have in the future, and therefore the population of cheetah here on Phinda Private Game Reserve will only increase. For those of you who have been to Phinda before, you will know that we have usually have a very healthy population of cheetah. So Hita, the reason why cheetah have less genetic diversity is, unfortunately, one of the reasons is a bit of interbreeding. So they're a species that is not found all throughout South Africa, or at least all throughout Africa, so they're in very concentrated areas. And then what you will find is that it is inevitable that members that are either cousins or sometimes even males with their own daughters will mate. And so because of the lack of cheetah in the area and because of the low success rate that cheetah have, generally only the strong males survive, and therefore those are the males that will continuously breeding for quite some time. Now if we had a directional microphone, we might even hear these cheetah purring. Often when they're grooming like this, and they're being affectionate towards each other, you'll hear a bit of a purr. All sure you know what a purr sounds like, but As you know, I like to try and demonstrate the sounds that the animals make. So they go. Oh, the one cub's busy suckling. Now, I don't know if you noticed, just before that cub suckled, she has 8 teats, and all 8 teats have been suckled on recently. So often you might only see 2 or 4 teats, and that's not because she has 2 or 4 teats, but as her litter becomes smaller or smaller, or if she has a small litter, you'll find that not all of her teats will produce milk. And so the cubs will just stood on the head of a cub. Not all the cubs will suckle on all the teats, and so they generally will just produce milk by the teats that are stimulated. But it seems that these 3 cubs have been suckling from all of those 8 teats. Now they're going to suckle still for some time. You're looking for anything between about 4 to 6 months when they'll be fully weaned. So these little bundles of fluff would have started to follow their mother around at already about 6 weeks old. And so that's when she starts to move them from one area to the other. And it is also when they will start to be introduced to meat. And around that time, when they are introduced to meat, they are almost completely inseparable from their mother. Completely different to lions and leopards, who tend to leave their cubs, go off and hunt, leave them in a den site, and then come back. I would imagine that cheetahs don't do that just because how vulnerable their cubs are. So the mother would rather have the cubs with them. It seems like something has spooked the cheetah off in the distance, those 2 little cubs, and that's why they ran straight to mom, because they know that's where her safety net is. That's what it is. There is a vehicle that's coming down the road, and that's probably what you can hear as well. And that's exactly what these 3 cubs have heard. So like I said, they're not too used to vehicles yet. As time goes by, they're going to get used to the sounds of the engines and the tires on the ground and on the stones. But for now, these are all sounds that are new to them. So 3T, you're asking, does a cheetah cub have less opportunity to survive? Now, I'm not sure if you're comparing that to other species or particularly lions and leopards, but yes, unfortunately it is the case. Of all the large cats, all the large predators, cheetah's cubs are one of the cubs that, or they are the species that do have the lowest success rate at survival. So generally in a litter of 4 or even up to 6 sometimes, if 1 or 2 survive to adulthood or sexual maturity, they have done very well. We have often seen here on Phinda that sometimes a female will lose all her cubs, which is obviously terrible. But fortunately, what will happen is if a female does lose all her cubs, she'll go straight back into estrus, which means that a male, if she comes across a male, he'll mate with her, and then hopefully within the next 3 months she will give birth to her next litter. But if she does manage to get these cubs up to adulthood, around 20 months old, that's when she'll kick them out. And that will be around the same time when she'll go back into estrus. So we have fortunately still got another plus minus 17, 18 months left, where hopefully we'll see all 3 of these cubs with their mother. Right, so we're going to head over to Steve at Juma. Apparently he's got a tricky view of some antelope.
We do indeed. We've got a prime Nyala bull, or should I say a Nyala bull in his prime, in the prime Nyala habitat. They are grazers and browsers after all, and so here we go. How wonderful is he? Don't forget, everybody, if you have the time and the inclination, please do feel free to support us using the link below so we can continue to bring you wild and wonderful views from the African wilderness. Really appreciate that as the nyala disappears into the thicket. It's exactly why they like the thickets. Their camouflage is designed for it. Disruptive markings. And off it goes. Okay, well, we're going to carry on. Tristan seems to have come across some tracks of leopards. My name is Steve again, BK. And so we're slowly making our way into that area, hoping to obviously not go too quickly so that we eradicate any tracks that might be. Seem to have given us a bit of a tricky morning because it seems to have come out in an area that we were looking in. We'll have to see in a moment where Tristan exactly has gotten to. It is beautiful, beautiful light. It's just a little bit too bright to see too deep into the bush. But I love these winter days. It's not too hot, which means you have the potential to have these animals moving. And as it even starts to get to this time of day, there's Tristan. Stop there. Oh! Gets to this time of day, potential for the cats to even start moving a bit earlier. Elephants have been all over the place. Traffic jam. Hello, gentlemen. Okay. Okay, I didn't see anything on the road itself, so.
I think she carried on and he's come back, but there's obviously turning comes tracks next to
Yeah. Yeah, so it's all right, man. I'm going to head up to Buffelshoek. It sounds like a female has popped in on the north there, unidentified, but relaxed, and she's disappeared into the thicket, but I don't know who it is. Yeah. They said they were tracking them, and then I asked who, and they said, no, we can see her. So let me go there quickly, and then I'll come back around this way on Drakensberg. Okay, keep us posted. Thanks, bud. It's a tricky time of day for the it's a nice time of day for track. It's not as easy as it is in the morning, but if we missed anything, we might pick it up now. But the chances of a normal lion or leopard in any situation moving at this time of day is a little bit limited. But as I said at the beginning of drive, a female and a male in a mating relationship definitely will be moving. Might not be far, but they could come onto the road and then back again, back on the road. Nothing to think about for themselves except for their partnership for the time being. They might go and drink, but that's about it. So I did a report just now on the radio about a leopard that came in from the north. No one, well, the gentleman with it was not able to identify her. I've got a feeling it might be Tlalamba. I did ask for a spot pattern, but I haven't heard back, so we'll just continue up here, but obviously also still nice and steady, so we can check the road. Okay, so I didn't quite get the link there, but I'm linking across to somebody. I have no doubt they've got something wonderful to show you.
So Jean-Jo and I just wanted to introduce those of you who haven't met Mel Gibson, or Mel or Gibson as you prefer. And he is the successor to Melanie. They're both Sama melons. They both come from the same plant. And we're actually going to be keeping him as long as we can. Mel met an untimely demise, and that was entirely due to my fault. She actually escaped off the vehicle on one of the game drives. And yeah, anyway, we'll leave it at that. So this is Mark II version of Melanie, and you can actually see the seeds inside his mouth. You can see stuck in there. So inside here, there can be, in a very big one, we've actually opened up at over 1,000 seeds in it, about 1,400 seeds. This one is quite a bit smaller. This is one, excuse the radio there, guys. This one's quite a bit smaller, but I'm really keen. We'll keep him as long as we can, and then we'll actually take all the seeds out and we'll do a seed count on these. But yeah, that's Mel, for those of you who don't know yet, and he joins us on all our activities. He's got a bit of armoured ground cricket damage around his eyes. That was yesterday morning at the Meerkat Burrow. Some armoured ground crickets tucked into him. But we're going to keep him safe. Don't worry. He's with us the whole way. And we're going to continue looking for aardvark. It's still quite warm, but the temperature's dropping quite rapidly now, which is good for us. Because it's good for them foraging. They're feeding primarily on ants and termites. And in the hot summer months, the ones that they feed on actually only come out above ground or up to the surface as the temperatures start dropping in summer. And because of that, late in the evening when the temperatures start dropping. So you're only starting to see aardvark pangolins late at night in the summer months. But now as the temperatures are cooling down, these ants and termites actually start coming to the surface. The UV rays now, the sun's quite low on the horizon in winter months down in where we are. So these species can actually tolerate these low light levels, start coming to the surface early and early in the afternoon, and aardvark pangolin, and also aardwolf. That's another very, very special species if we can find one for you. But we're going to keep looking. We're not going to stop as long as it takes. But as long as you're with us, then we're happy to carry on. Wow, now, geez, that's a tough question to answer. So James has just asked, how many endemic species are found on Swalu or within this Kalahari region? Why I say it's a tough question is, if I'm looking at plants alone, just on Swalu, okay, we don't have any plants that are endemic to Swalu and found nowhere else. So for those of you, in terms of terminology, you'd like to know, endemic means it's only found within a certain area. So you can get a plant that's indigenous to South Africa, but it's found right across the whole country. But then a plant that's endemic to South Africa, or a plant that's indigenous and endemic. In other words, it's found the whole of Southern Africa. You'll get it South Africa, Botswana, Namibia. But a plant that's endemic to South Africa, it means it's only found in South Africa, nowhere else. You can also get plants that are endemic to a particular region within a country. So, and some of them are super restricted in terms of range. There's a fun group of beetles down in the Cape Town area called colophon beetles, and they are only found on the tiny little tops of these mountains and nowhere else on the planet. So that would be a very extreme example of that. But coming back to our more local area and saying, we've got no plants that are endemic only to Swalu. But within the southern Kalahari, we have got a number of plants. Just thinking off the top of my head, there's a number of these what they call helichrysums. Some of them, they're often used in like flower arrangements, not these species, but globally, because they last a long time and they retain the color. So we've got a couple of those that occur here. We've got another one, interestingly, that's a Nemesia. It's like a snapdragon. A beautiful little flower. In fact, we only found that 4 weeks ago for the first time ever on Swalu. But its typical range is Southern Cape or your Southern Western Cape, and then up into like the Eastern Cape area. So that's like those southern coastal areas of South Africa. And we actually found a population of them existing on Swalu, same species. Now that is an example of a plant that's also endemic to South Africa. But not just the Kalahari, so it extends into an area outside of South Africa. So so why the question is difficult to answer is, we don't even know what's here. We know like kind of the basics, the big trees and big mammals and birds and that kind of stuff. But when you start delving into it, there are just masses of species, and a lot of them may be endemic, but we don't even know what that full extent is yet. So, and that's again coming back to the excitement of exploring these areas, and it can be literally on a game drive, going out as guides, and trackers. We are seeing things, and we are privileged to experience these environments for 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day. And we have this opportunity of seeing things and recording things that most people would never ever have the opportunity of doing. So coming back to the question of endemic, we certainly don't have a handle on all the endemic species yet. We do have a number, but we have no ones that are specifically endemic to swallow. And that probably hasn't answered your question at all, but it was interesting anyway. Yes, it's beautiful out here. But let's carry on. And good question, by the way, really, really good question. Because there's a lot of conservation implications pertaining to those kind of questions, in terms of endemic species and what conservation measures you're going to afford to an area if it's got a limited distribution and that. But I'm rambling now. I think let's head on and see if we can pick up any son of aardvark tracks or pangolins or anything else. I'm just avoiding an armoured ground cricket that was walking in the road. I think head over to Ngala in the meantime and see what those gents are up to. And we're just going to carry on looking for what we can find for you this side.
Okay, so we've had a bit of a struggle early this afternoon now. Lots of no signal and no animals. It should be the other way around. It would be much better. But we seem to be back in good signal areas, and we're driving along the river, having a look to see what we can find here. Hopefully something leopard, this sort of area is good for leopards, good for elephants, good for this giraffe, because it's nice and thick here. So that's what we're hoping for, but we'll just see what Ngala provides. No sign of that cheetah. I probably just came in, did a loop, and then left again. But that's okay. That is okay. So I heard, I think it was a Pinda, maybe, they were discussing sort of, naturally occurring animals, trees, anything endemic. And, okay, so is that swallow, actually, I'm being told, is that swallow? But yeah, look, most of our stuff is all naturally occurring. The only thing that I can think off the top of my head that is not naturally occurring in this area would be the 4 baobab trees that we have. So we've got 3 altogether, which is sort of just back off behind us, that are growing out there, and then there's 1 inside of the Ambient Ngala tented camp. And those baobab trees don't naturally occur in this region. But otherwise, everything here is all natural. We obviously don't plant anything. We don't bring in any animals that don't occur in the area. We don't actually bring in any animals. So everything that you'll find is natural. Those baobab trees, they came here many years ago. Before this land is what it is now. A lot of it was privately owned, and this guy planted some on the property, and that's how they made their way here. But since we've been incorporated into this greater area of conservation land, you're not allowed to bring in and plant and place and change things like that. So luckily as well, everything here is natural, which is really fantastic. The fact that it is like that and it is protected as much as it is, which means it should stay this way for hopefully hundreds of years. To have an area this sort of size, if we take the size of Ambient Ngala and the Timbavati off our west and that whole hundreds of areas off to our east, you're looking at over 2.5 million hectares of protected land. which is phenomenal. You know, in hectares, that is probably around 4 or 5 million hectares of protected land. Acres, which is incredible. It's fantastic. It allows us to do this, to take you on drives and hopefully find you animals that we're not doing at the moment. But you know, everything like that. It's on a side note, so we're slowly making our way back towards the lions. So there's this area here, off sort of in front of us, off to the right, that the lioness gave birth to those 2 young cubs that we all are so fond of. It was inside these trees. This is where she had her first den, just on the other side of the river. She had it there. And then she moved them up and down this section of the river. And if you were all tuned in, maybe, 12 days ago, we saw that big long walk that she did with her 2 cubs. That was all the way across these trees here. And then you'll see now where we're going, sort of where they are now, is a great distance. And it's been so fascinating to have all of you and do this journey with her, from the dens, the movement to the new dens every time, and the progression to now being part of the pride. It's special stuff. It is very special stuff that we are allowed to do because of all the protected land. Again, it's very noisy. Franklin's over there. I think the car spooked them. There were some little ones that flew into the longer grass. So, as I said, we're making our way towards those lions. Temperatures dropping very, very quickly. You drive through a patch of shade like this, and I'm telling you, it drops 2 or 3 degrees sometimes. So hopefully by the time we get there should be a bit of activity. But what we're going to do in the meantime is send you back across to the cheetahs at and beyond Pinda.
So not much has happened in the time that you guys... So not much has happened in the time that you've all been away listening to the wonderful stories of the endemic animals at Tswalu and Ngala. Although, as I say that, the one cub must have heard me say, well, not much has happened. It's like, well, I will show you. And it has decided to suckle. So at this age, getting a very good mixture of diet between the extra bit of proteins and fats from the milk and calcium, and then obviously the proteins from the nyala that they're busy feeding on. And this type of feeding behavior of suckling and eating meat so this bit of process at the moment of it busy suckling and eating meat just helps this cub to grow as quickly as it can, because that is vitally important for this cub to get to adulthood. And the more that it eats and the more that it suckles, the quicker that it will grow. Right, so for those of you who are still a little bit unfamiliar about exactly where we are filming at the moment in Ambion Pinda Private Game Reserve, and this is in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, along the east coast. We're actually very close to the coastline, and I know we've had a couple of questions from the viewers about, is this in Kruger National Park? And we are not in Kruger National Park. If you were to drive from Pinda to get to Kruger National Park, or the southern borders of Kruger National Park, it would probably take you about 9 hours or so. So a bit of a far drive. We're in a bit of a smaller reserve than Kruger National Park, and we're about 28,000 hectares. Quite a bit smaller than the 2 or 3 million hectares that is the Greater Kruger National Park. But nonetheless, we have very similar species to what they're seeing. This cute little animal over here with the 3 little cubs, some cheetah. And this cub's decided to suckle again. Just want to take my binoculars and have a closer look. It's not something we often get to see, is cheetah cubs suckling, because most of the times when I've been able to see a cheetah, I've seen them in the long grass and not on the road like this, so you will never get nice and close as we can now. Isn't that just spectacular? So I can see how she was licking away at the teat, trying to stimulate the teat, and now she's pushing the teat up against the roof of her palate, or its palate with its tongue and sucking away. And sometimes you'll see when they suckle like this, they even fall asleep. So the FC is asking if cubs have a specific teat, like they say, okay, teat number 1 is mine, teat number 2 is yours. No, they don't. You'll often see them moving from one teat to the other. Once the one teat's sort of drained from its milk, they'll go to the next one, and you'll often see when there's 2 or 3 of them trying to suckle at one time, they will sometimes compete and try to push each other for the teat that does seem to be fuller with milk. So if you have a close look, I'm just going to ask Marcel to zoom in on the teats. You'll notice that the teat that you can't see the teat that the cub's busy suckling on at the moment, but the one to the left, and there's another one to the left. So there's 2 to the left of the cub. Those are very exposed. And then the 4th teat, which you can't really see because there's quite a lot of hair around it, is a teat that probably doesn't have much milk, and so that teat they very seldom suckle on. You can see that there's almost no suckle marks, whereas the other 2 teat and the teat that the cub's suckling on, and also on the other side of those teats there will be 4 more teats. And we did have a look earlier, and it did look like there were only 6 teats that were really suckled on, and the 2 that were closer to the chest of the mother seem to not have been suckled on. See how heavily she's busy breathing at the moment. So she is overheating. So having to kill a large carcass or a large antelope like an Inyala will take a lot of energy. To be able to rip and tear at the carcass would also use quite a lot of energy. The lack of sweat glands that they have means that they struggle to cool down. And with the amount of meat that she's got in her stomach, she's busy working overtime to break down that meat. Now that produces the energy that she uses heat. So Peri, sorry, I lost my words there because I was busy listening to the question at the same time. Peri, cheetah cubs will start eating meat at around 6 weeks old. So they will, sometimes a little bit earlier than that, but almost from the first time that they're introduced to meat, they will stick with their mother, and they'll eat meat for anything up to about 6 months. It depends from female to female. We have noticed that certain individuals tend to suckle their cubs for much longer than others, but on average you're looking at about 6 months. But closer towards that 6-month weaning period, they won't suckle as often. Right, so back to the breathing. So she's breathing heavy like that, basically just to try help herself cool down. So Tammy, you're asking if one of these cubs are a runt. I don't think so. I was having a look at them when they were busy playing around, and they all looked very similar in size. They all look just as healthy. Fortunately for me today, it's the first time I've seen these cubs, but I haven't spent much time with them. So I wouldn't know if there is a runt of the litter or if there is one in this litter that is more dominant than the other. But I do not suspect that this litter has a runt, just based on the condition of all 3 of the cubs. It's amazing the experiences that I had in the Sabi Sands with leopard cubs. If I'm looking down the back of this baby cheetah, it really reminds me of some of the young cubs that I saw in the Sabi Sands. It's bringing back some great memories. All right, everyone, I think this has been a fantastic afternoon with these cheetah. And, to watch them feeding and the cubs playing around and suckling, I don't think we can ask for much more than that. So I think we're going to carry on. We're going to let them be, let them have some peace and quiet from my voice. And while we go look for other animals, we're going to head over to the far north to Tualu.
Chandra and I are just still sitting and scanning dune crests. It's a very, very good way, effective way in an area, a landscape of this size, the scale, to try to locate things like aardvark, aardwolf, batched foxes, and we've actually picked up, Chandra actually picked it up, not me. I can't claim that one. Oryx bull, gemsbok bull. Somewhere in there he is, hiding behind those trees. And we obviously have the advantage, you know, on being able to say it's a bull just purely because he was a little bit closer to us earlier. So we had a good look at him, so we could see the undercarriage, as well as your females, aside from going in large groups, they've also got much longer, thinner horns, whereas the males tend to have these slightly shorter, stubbier horns. Don't laugh at me, Jandre, with my language. And it's difficult if you don't have a male and a female next to each other to decide, okay, well, that's a male and that's a female, because then you can obviously easily compare them. But seeing them at a distance like this, we can see clearly that it is a male. Short thick horns, and also the one horn is actually broken off, actually worn off. It looks more like the tip is actually broken off, which could very well have been in a fight. You know, the horn closest to us on the left-hand side. Yeah, there's a ground squirrel as well. See, Nick, that's a great question. I was actually, before answering it, I was actually hoping that we'd get a nice, super close-up view of an oryx, because then it becomes really obvious. So the oryx has a lot of adaptations for these arid areas. And just to highlight the extent of the aridity that they can actually tolerate before I go into it, is I've been very, very fortunate being up in Namibia, you know, looking at the dune fields from the air once, and just seeing every couple of dune crests, there's this oryx bull standing up there. You'll find these, and as far as you can see in every direction, it's just sand and rock and incredibly sparse patches of grass. So the landscape, the semi-arid savanna that we're seeing them in here, is like a lush oasis compared to those areas. So they have this incredibly high tolerance, and they're not the only ones that have it, but there's a very special mechanism called carotid rete that's found in a number of them. Wildebeest is another example that just comes to mind off the top of my head. And talking about the carotid rete is, a lot of people will say, the gemsbok can cool its brain to below its normal body temperature. So as your ambient temperature picks up, the body temperature rises, and then it can cool its brain, and that's how it survives. And it's kind of partially correct, but also not entirely correct. And I'll give you a very, very brief version here. So inside the nasal cavities, you've obviously got blood getting pumped from the heart to the brain, which is the temperature of the body, and that, like I say, that can rise depending on your ambient temperature. I mean, we can get days out here of 50 plus degrees centigrade. It gets really, really hot, although your normal summer temperature is a little bit less. So what happens is you get this super hot blood moving up to the brain. Well, the animal wouldn't be able to survive that. But what it does is, around the nasal cavities, okay, there's this diffusion of blood vessels. So your blood going to the brain passes through these, and that blood in those vessels has been cooled in the nasal passages by the animal breathing. And so that now blood goes, the ones going to the brain goes through those vessels, but it doesn't cool the whole brain. It actually cools a very specific part. So it's selective brain cooling of the hypothalamus, as opposed to just cooling the whole brain down. The hypothalamus is what cools the animal's reaction to high temperature, or alters the animal's reaction or behavioral traits to high temperatures. So in other words, if the hypothalamus starts detecting, whoa, okay, I'm getting really hot here, it's going to cause the animal to start panting, as one example. So if the animal's panting, it's going to start losing more water. Okay, so what this does, this system like just short circuits that hypothalamus. It tricks the hypothalamus into thinking, well, actually, it's not that hot, so I'm just going to stand, I'm not going to pant. yeah, I might amble over, move into the shade, or not even bother moving into the shade. I just don't pant as much. And that is one of the key things there, because an animal that's panting is losing body moisture. The moment you're losing body moisture, immediately the entire system becomes compromised. And that's where the problem sets in. So this is a very, very neat little trick. It's selective brain cooling, and it's a
Right, so we're still on the tracks for this male and female. They've walked everywhere, and it's been really complicated following them. Unfortunately, I must be honest, Steve and I made a mistake this morning. We did not do our due diligence when tracking. We didn't do it properly, and we both turned too early on the tracks, and they came back out on the road, which is our naughtiness. Slap on the wrist. But they've walked all the way, and the problem why it's complicated is because it's now Tandy and cub tracks from yesterday, in the male track, the female track, and she's going back up and down. So you've got, in some places, 6 or 7 leopard tracks walking down the road, and you times that by 4, so it's a lot of footprints going up, down in all directions, and especially because, you know, whenever a female follows a male, there tends to be a lot of zigzagging that takes place. So it's been a bit of a struggle, and last tracks we had were kind of coming northeast towards Buffelshoek Dam. So I'm wondering if this female that was spotted at the dam just up ahead here is going to be maybe Shadulu. And so it's worth just heading in that direction, just seeing if we can maybe get a view of this leopard. Steve is checking the boundary to make sure they didn't go out east, because their general direction was east, but there's also some elephants behind me. So let's stop and have a look at those, because elephants are always nice to look at. Hello, elephants. Sorry, David, I know it's not a great view for now. We'll get a better view shortly, I'm hoping. But there is a few ellies that are in the bush at this stage. It's been a lot of elephants in the last 24 hours. And why I was quite excited about the tracks that we had this afternoon is because the male and female tracks that we were following were on top of a lot of the elephant footprints that were on top of some of the tracks that I saw this morning. So it had to have walked a little bit later. And so I was kind of excited that we'd pick it up, but unfortunately another vehicle was drove in front of me and cut the tracks as well, so it's going to make life also difficult as when a vehicle's driven over them to see where they go. But hopefully, you know, if we just hang around in the area, we'll get some sort of audio, and it explains why we might not have heard anything this morning, is because we might just have been in the wrong geographic location, so in the wrong area code, so to speak. But these ellies, I'm sure, have just come from Buffelshoek Dam. We're really not far from there at all, and they are enjoying a nice afternoon snack. Kind of moving down this drainage line is the perfect place for them to be able to feed. And if they haven't come from Buffelshoek Dam, then they've come from the Mulawati drainage, where they've been basically digging for water. And that, you know, that's where they get the water that they so require. Now, I believe Julie, who sponsored our drive today, was looking for ellies, and so I'm glad that we've managed to find some for you. The ellies have arrived. I'm sure there'll be some ellies that will go down to the various water holes. It's been a warm afternoon, and the little breeze that was blowing earlier has completely dropped, and it is now very, very still and quite warm actually for this time of the year. And so I suspect that you're going to find these elephants slowly but surely moving their ways towards bigger water points where they can maybe have a little splash or a drink, and then kind of feed their way into the night. And you'll find the elephant activity is going to increase during the night as we lead up to full moon. They become a lot more active during the full moon. Tend to see them moving about quite a bit. So a lot more vocalizing in the night time than what you have at new moon. For some reason, full moon just makes the ellies go a little bit crazy at times, and lots of playing and trumpeting in the middle of the night. Maybe it's also because they can see better in the full moon and pick up predators and those kinds of things, which is why they can potentially be a little bit more vociferous when it's full moon period. And like I say, we are gearing up to full moon at the moment. We're on a waxing crescent, so it should be full moon, I think, in about 4 or 5 days' time. It should be full moon again. Unfortunately, where the ellies are heading, is not going to be great for us because it's one is very, very thick, and two, it goes down a little bit, and it's a notoriously difficult place. So I can get a bed. And while I do that, I'm going to send you to Swalu Kalahari. I'm not 100% sure what they've got, but I think it's Rebecca's favorite.
In that gap, you see it? Just keep going there, keep going there. Okay, we've got another bat-eared fox. Bat-eared foxes. There's actually a little family group of them out there. We just had the camera trained on one and he got up and moved. So there's the second one. So they're starting to forage now. Yep. Wow. Let's see if they come out there. They're at that bush there. They're just behind that bush, that big one on the right. I'm sure I saw a movement there. So they've just started foraging in that. And one running way away in the distance. Sorry, one in the gap. Come back to where we there. There we go. Super. Look at the size of those ears. They are massive. Yeah, and there he goes. Dink. That was a very lucky sighting, that one, sure. We saw them from quite a distance away, just tucked into the bushes there. So as we approach closer, they don't seem that relaxed. But it's always fun to see them, eh? But the encouraging thing about seeing these now out and becoming active and starting to forage is that it means that things like aardvark, there's a fair chance of aardvark also being out and becoming active now. So we're just going to keep our eyes absolutely peeled now. And our fingers crossed, our toes crossed. Aishi, those are two of my favorite animals, of all my favorite animals, caracal and serval. So serval don't occur in this area that we're in. Serval like areas that get a higher rainfall, and they like long grass because they rodent specialists. So they'll hunt rodents in a long grass, and particularly along areas where there's water. So along the edges of rivers, dams, lakes, that kind of thing, where there's nice lush grasslands. And because of you get a lot of rodents in those areas, like these big, what we call marsh rats or flay rats, big chunky things, and that's what they like eating. But caracal, we get good numbers of caracal out here, but they're very, very, very shy. So we'll keep our eyes posted. Even if we see tracks of a caracal, we'll show tracks as well. But they're beautiful animals, though, both of them, both species. Very, very special. Oh, it's a magical afternoon out here. So we're going to continue our journey, searching for fun stuff. And in the meantime, head back to the Ellie's elephants at Juma.
Hopefully you will find lots of interesting things on your journey up ahead, Dylan. As you can see, we've positioned ourselves a little bit better, and there's some absolutely beautiful light behind these elephants. There's a lot of bush, but there's also this late afternoon light, and it's nice in this particular area because you've got light reflecting off a bit of greenery, and that's fast disappearing in many respects. David, you're right there. Yep. Oh, I thought for a second you might have fallen off the car. I was a bit worried. I was very concerned. But David's fine, everybody, don't worry. David just had a whoopsie in the back there. Dropped something. Cam-ups often have all kinds of clutter at the back, like guides do as well. And so often you see them dropping things exactly like how we do too. But as I was going to say, it's nice to see a bit of green, because obviously going into winter now, it gets brown and drab, and it's not nearly as pretty when the light hits the brown stuff as it does the green stuff, particularly if you can get an elephant kind of in amongst it and naturally framed by the trees. It's always really a nice kind of image that you can get out of it. So I'm glad that we're in a place along a drainage line where there's a little bit more greenery, and certainly makes for a pretty afternoon scene. If the elephants would just come out a little bit, it would certainly make my day. They're still hiding ever so slightly. They'll eventually make their way past us. We're kind of roughly in their feeding path. They're a little bit sort of further south than we are, but they should pass in front quite nicely at some point. I believe Steve is calling me. Go ahead, Steve. Interesting. So Steve's got more tracks for male, female, Tundi, cub. So I wonder if maybe they followed Tundi and Cub's tracks a little bit, and then she definitely went into Torchwood, but the two of them might be on Chidakatla. Now, a lot of you might be wondering what is going on, why Shidulu would be moving all the way to the east like this, and will it be dangerous for Tundi's cub, and will Mulawati be dangerous, and all these kinds of things, and I know a lot of you are concerned about all of that and are confused by it. So when a female leopard mates with a male, often she will cross multiple territories in order to mate with that male. Now what she's doing is she's going to vocalize on the fringes of her territories, and that's going to attract the attention of a Mulawati in this case, who's a fringe male for her core territory. She's going to mate with him for the pure reason that in the space that she's pregnant and raises that cub, which we know is about a 2-year period, roughly, a lot can change. And Mulawati might shift and push Hukamuri out and become the dominant male in her core territory. So it's her advantage to mate with the males that surround her core territory, and as many of them as possible. And that way, if the males come across her cubs, they think that they've fathered them, and therefore protects those cubs more. And it's not unusual to have her move as far as she has. Yes, we've never seen her in this side before, and that makes it a little bit unusual, but it's not something that you see or should be concerned about, that she's here. She's literally here for one thing and one thing only, is to mate. Once she's done with the mating, she's going to run straight back to her normal territory. And to give you an idea, I once had Karula, basically 2 female territories to the southwest, out of Djuma. So she moved all the way off Djuma down to the southwest when she mated with Tingana for the first time. So it is something that does happen. In terms of Tundi and Cub would have heard that vocalizing yesterday and would have shifted that cub into a safe place. And if she heard any sound of those guys, or those two, she'll just move that cub again. And so it should be quite safe. Look, if Shidulu did come across the cub, then there's obviously going to be an interaction, and there could be a fatal one. But she'll do as much interference there and probably will draw the attention away and will take on Shidulu herself in that instance. All right, from big pachyderms this side in a herd structure, it sounds like Ambion Pinda have got slightly smaller grey, large, feasting mammals.
And this morning we were able to find for that this secular. Look.
Well, and a few little gremlins, which I'm sure will be sorted out very quickly, but sounds like that little one is super cute. Emma was telling me about it from this morning. Sounds like a tiny little one is running around and just being cute as little baby animals can be, and baby rhinos definitely are, with their big feet and big ears. Anyway, our Ellies, as I said to you earlier, will slowly move closer to us. They're kind of feeding. I'm surprised that this one came the way she did, because they were actually facing further south and feeding more south. But for some reason, she's turned completely and is come the opposite direction now, and is coming north. It's a weird thing, and it's a theory that I would love for somebody to study at some point, because I think it would be super interesting, is that in my time here at WildEarth, in particular with these smaller Land Rovers, we seem to get elephants that almost become intrigued with the vehicle more than they do so with the bigger vehicles with guests on. And I would love for somebody to do a study to see if there's potentially a link to the fact that we broadcast and therefore push out a signal, and that these elephants pick up on that signal, and that intrigues them, and that means that they come and investigate, because we get a lot of encounters of these animals just moving closer than you would normally get and changing their course to come towards where we are, which is odd. Generally with animals, they hold a course when they're moving, and don't really come and investigate you too much, but these guys seem to do it quite often, particularly elephant. And so I would love to know if maybe that is the situation, or if it's to do with the fact that our cars are just that much smaller and we have far less movement in the fact that there's only the two of us on the vehicle, as opposed to a vehicle that might have 6 or 8 or whatever it may be on the cars. So it would be really interesting to know. Also, like I say, these cars are much smaller than a normal game viewer would be, that has guests on it. But I would love for somebody to do that study. I think it would be fascinating to know, because there's definitely an intrigue from the elephants when it comes to us. And like I say, they change their whole feeding path sometimes, and move up towards the vehicles, and sometimes deliberately through thickets even, which is quite interesting. So, Julie, it's really dependent on season. So you're asking about how far do any specific herd of elephants roam in this specific area, and so it is season specific. If you have the drier winter months, then they tend to roam more, purely because food is not as readily available and water is not readily as available, so have to travel longer distances. But in saying that, the Sabi Sands ecosystem has a lot of pumped water, which actually means that they don't move as much as maybe the elephants of the Kruger, which is adjacent to us, and we're part of the same system. There's not as much pumped water there, and so those elephants will cover much bigger ground, maybe even to come into the Sabi Sands for the day and then back out again. And so the average kind of distance I would say in the summer, sometimes you can find the same herd within 500 meters of where you left them the night before. And then during the day, they might walk another 500 meters or a kilometer, not very far at all. In winter, you tend to find that they move a little bit further, but to give you an idea, is that last night, we had a herd of elephants at the dam in front of Vuyatela at Gari Dam, and that herd of elephants this morning was less than 500 meters from where we left them last night. They'd just gone into the Mulawati, and they'd spent basically the whole night feeding there, and because there's water still in the drainage line and because there's still food, there's really no pressure for them to move around. There's no big bulls around at the moment that is hassling them. So they can be a lot more kind of stationary. So the movement is quite small now, but as everything dries out and food becomes less available, then you're going to find that they can move further. And some herds will be able to do 30 miles in a day if they have to. They can cover quite a big distance. And like I said, that will be more in areas where there's not as much pumped water as what you see in the private sector of the greater Kruger system. And each herd will be different too, it will be dependent on the matriarch, will depend on how she feels, where she wants to find food, where she's learnt that there's going to be food at different times of the year. That'll also be indicative of how far they go. So, when we use numbers and things when it comes to movements and patterns, it's always averages. And I actually got sent a really, really interesting thing, not on elephants, but on wild dogs of the Kruger National Park. And it was sent to me by a friend of mine called Grant, who's the EWT, so Endangered Wildlife Trust, researcher for the dogs in this area. And it was an incredibly interesting look at how wild dogs move within the Kruger Park ecosystem. So what they did is they collared 20 different packs. And then within those packs, there was dispersals and various other things. And I'll show you the video. I'm sorry that it's going to be quite quick because it's not a video that I'm able to stop and slow down. And I'll try and post it on my social media for others that are interested in having a look. But I'm going to press the button. Sorry, David's going to go. Now, watch the dispersal ones are the sort of light shaded area. And then the dark ones are normal packs. Now, you'll see collars are being added all the time. So you're getting new packs. And this will give you an idea of how much movement the dispersal animals do versus the packs. And you can see how as the dates change, basically the movement changes through the season. And sometimes they do big movements away and then come back to the area that they were utilizing. Other times the movement is very, very still. But you can see it's mostly centered around the river systems. So these are all big rivers that you're getting down in the southern areas. Super, super cool to kind of watch it going. And it goes on and on and on. It goes through the years. That's just 2017. It was a 3-year project. That goes on, but you can see that there's a lot of movement from these dogs, and like I said, that's just a one-collared individual with a pack that then moves around. So when we use numbers, it's always averages. It's never the same for each individual grouping. So this herd might move further than, let's say, another herd that we saw yesterday evening or we'll see tomorrow. It was a long-winded answer, but hopefully it answered the question. Seems like the rest of the herd is slowly dropping down into the Mulawati. I wonder if they're not going to go and have a little drink in the dug-up wells that they've got down there. In this section where we are now, lots and lots of diggings for elephants, and it's still quite wet here in this northern part of the Mulawati, close to Buffelshoek Dam. All right, well, we've been sitting with these ellies. We were trying to hope that we'd hear some sounds for these leopards. I know Steve's on the tracks, so we're going to leave these guys now. I want to go just check up on that leopard that was seen in case it's popped out. So while we do that, though, let's send you to Ambient Ngala. It sounds like they're also looking at another one of the big herbivores.
See, now we have made it to the waterhole with those beautiful hippos that are actually all seem to be watching the sunset. It's going to be a beautiful sunset tonight, especially here around the waterhole. You'll see it's going to be quite magic. Not much else happening here. So if you remember, this is where we had the lions this morning. So the lions were just in front of those hippos, off to the left there, in that little sandy section. That's where the lions were. That's where we saw them all drinking. And they have now left. They have gone. They're not where they were supposed to be, which is fine. It's a hot day. I don't think they've moved far. What I would say has happened is elephants came and chased the lions. They came down for a drink and they saw the lions, sort of chased them away, and the lions moved off. You can see those hippos, though, not really watching the sunset. I think they could be staring off towards where the lions are, or where the lions were. So that's what they were doing this morning. They watched the lions. Lions are in the area. They're at their waterhole. This is where the hippos feel safe. So the hippos are going to be watching them. The lions are still a predator, so they've got to be careful. What I'm doing is I am just actually looking for tracks here. So there's a nice sandy path around here, and I'm looking to see if I can find any tracks of the lions, see which direction they went, just so we can narrow down which direction we want to drive. As I said, they're not too far. We saw tracks of one lion on the way in here, but we think it's the lioness that we saw heading off this morning with her cubs. She took them down there, and that's where we saw the tracks. So she went that way. The rest of the pride, I think, are just somewhere around us here in the shade. That's where they've been resting for the day. So hopefully they're not too far. And now that it's getting cooler, it increases our chances. That's when they get active. They're going to start yawning, they're going to start moving, maybe stand up or go to the toilet, and we can see that. And I've got a question now: do we feel a danger being on foot here? And no, not at all. These lions, they don't see us as food. They're not trying to come and attack us. If I'm standing here and the lion is over there, it will lift up its head or look at me. It will growl at me. It's just a warning. It's saying to me, you're very, very close. If you come any closer, then things are going to happen. As long as I stop, I walk away, it's perfectly fine. The lion's going to go back to sleep. They don't see us as food. So it's not, I don't need to be scared for my life that, these lions are going to stalk me and run out of the bushes and attack me. Not going to happen. We track these lions all the time. This is how it's done. We go off and we look and we find, and we've survived so far every time. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to do some exploring around here, see if I can narrow down where these lions are. And while I do that, we're going to send you over to Steve, because he's also tracking, see what he's looking for.
Good luck, Sean. I hope you found your lions. We've been trying quite hard today to find some leopards, and I found a road that has got more leopard tracks on it than I've ever in my life come across. There's male, female, there's cubs going one way, cubs going the other way. The positive thing about the cubs going the one way is that they're coming back towards Juma. I had the female and her cub track coming this way yesterday towards the east, and I found them coming back, stepping on top of yesterday's tracks. But then in amongst that, there's another male and female, which potentially is the mating pair we've been looking for. I'm just trying to see where they cut through. That little link road to the east with so much activity. Tandi spent a lot of time up here, maybe a little bit later than what she is with her cub now, with Kalamba, who's her previous cub. She spent a fair bit of time up here in this marula veld. Some wonderful times with her, actually. It was when Tingana was a bit poor in health at the time, and Hukumuri was moving in from the west. Hukumuri was, at the time, everybody called him the usurper. He came in to take over, and Tingana moved a bit more to the east, and Tandi did as well with her cub Tlalamba, and she did very well in this area. And so maybe she's decided it's a good place to be. The watering hole, the Torchwood's not very far away, so that's also maybe why we've got those tracks up and down. Took her to drink. The cub can get most of its liquid from mum's milk, but Tandi will need to drink. And the cub stretches her legs. So if they don't come out on this road, then very likely just in this block here, which is very exciting. But look what we got to contend with. Dense, thick grass, quite well vegetated bush, the perfect sort of place to try and hide one's cub. Many little hidey holes. It's been a very good year with regards to rainfall, so the vegetation is really, really good, and it's still quite green, considering it's already June. Last year, I think May, the leaves were gone already. It was a very different affair. Here we go. The full moon is on its way. Another 2 days, I would say, 3 days possibly. There's something moving in the bushes here. By the sound of it, it's not a leopard cub. By the sound of it, it's a francolin or something just pushing the leaves. Let's just move forward slightly, BK. Maybe we'll be able to spot what it is. It's important, if you are on game drive, to switch off every now and again and just listen. Amazing how many things I've found by just listening. But francolins are, they rustle through the vegetation, looking for insects that might be hiding under the leaves or the floor material. Scratching. Might have just heard a golden-tailed woodpecker there. Quack. BK's got something moving. Looks like an elephant, everybody. Well, that definitely makes enough noise, so. Isn't that incredible that an elephant can hide in the vegetation like that and you don't even know it's there? We just heard it. How wonderful. Anyway, from our very large pachyderm, we're going to send you all the way over to Ngala Pinda. who's got one a little bit smaller.
Sorry everyone about earlier, we had some technical difficulties, but we've managed to come back to you with these 3 rhino. I'm not sure exactly when or where my feed froze, so you can't see at the moment, but there is a tiny rhino calf between the 2 rhinos that we can see. So we've got the adult female in the front, and we've got what we think is her old calf. It might be her old calf, or it might be a satellite calf that is trying to join up with her. It's a bit difficult to say, but then her tiny little calf, which is so small, you can't even see it through this long grass, is probably around a month old. For those of you that watched this morning, it is the exact same 3 that we were able to see this morning. And so when we had them about 5-10 minutes ago, they were down by the water, they had a quick drink, and now she's come up to the crest where she has decided to feed. So these are white rhinos, and white rhinos are grazers. And when I say grazers, I mean that they eat grass. And it seems that they must have found a very good patch, a nutritious patch of grass where they are right now. So for those of you who are seeing rhinos on WildEarth for the first time and wondering why we haven't been filming rhinos previously, there's a question, I'll get back to you now. So Anushka, we think that this calf is probably about a month old. We can see by the size of the calf to the mother, and it almost has no horns yet. The front horn has just started to grow out, so we think that it's about a month old or so. So just to quickly get to those of you who are wondering why we're filming rhinos here today, at Ambion Phinda Private Game Reserve, we have decided that our rhinos here are 100% safe, and so that we're happy to film them. Now the reason that they're safe is that we've got a great relationship with the community, and so the community don't come poach here. We've got a very good anti-poaching team, and third and probably most importantly, we have dehorned these rhinos. So when you look at this female as she lifts her head up from when she's been feeding, you'll notice that she doesn't have a horn. And so what we do is we get a vet. He comes in, he cuts maybe about a foot or 2 off of the horn, and by shortening the horn to the length that it is at the moment, makes that rhino almost worthless for the poacher to come and poach. So in other words, lowers the value of this particular rhino to the poachers, and so they rather will not come and poach. The reason why they don't poach it is because the risk of being caught is not worth the reward of the tiny little rhino that they have, or sorry, the tiny little rhino horn that they will get. And all of our rhinos here on Ambion Phinda Private Game Reserve have been dehorned, and that is why we are 100% certain that our rhinos are safe, whether we show them to you or not. And like I've said in the past, how else are you going to be educated by rhinos if we do not show you? So here we are at Phinda, showing you all rhinos, and what a wonderful way to show you rhinos. While they do what they naturally do, and more so in this case, we have a female with a baby. So Joy, the average weight that a white rhino calf will be when it is born is around 40 to 30 kg. So they're quite small when they're born, but they've got heavy bones, and that makes them quite heavy. So you'll notice as she's got her head down, you'll see her ears moving from side to side, independently from each other. Now, she has very poor eyesight. This is the case with all rhinos, and so she will rely heavily on her sense of hearing to hear any potential danger off in the distance. And coupled with her good hearing, she also does have a very good sense of smell. From about 30 meters and so, her vision will become a bit blurry, and that's why she's got those big ears right on top of her head to be able to hear, and her big nostrils to be able to smell everything that is around. When she does have a calf like she has at the moment, she will be a little bit more edgy, and any sort of sound or twig breaking off in the distance will catch her attention. Now, a calf of that age is potentially vulnerable to the attack of a male leopard, or probably more likely a lion, but as long as the female is near to her calf, those lions won't try their luck. 'Cause such a big female like this, she's probably about 1.8 tons, maybe less, 1.6 tons. And so a very big animal with a lot of power, a lot of strength in that neck. She could easily defend that calf. Right, so while we can't see this calf, it's in the long grass, it does open up a little bit more to where we are now. So we're going to stick here for a little bit. We've got maybe about 5-10 minutes of light left, hoping that she's going to come up. But in the meantime, while we wait for the calf, let's head over to Sean with some hippos.
Okay, so we're still here with our hippos. I'm now back in the car. Unsuccessful little stint for the lions, not even a track. But we're still hopeful. There's one more area that we're going to check. But in the meantime, you can see these hippos have actually been very, very active. They're making a lot of noises, moving quite a lot around the water hole as well, doing a lot of grunting. And today, I have discovered that I do not trust hippos. I was walking down towards the bank to see, quite far from the hippos, a good 50-60 meters away from them. But I was walking down there to see if I could find any tracks of them drinking. Oh, look at the one yawning. There's one yawning on the left. Oh, he stopped now. But he's doing it again. But, just to have a look if the lions went down to drink there, try and get a direction. And this one hippo just sort of started coming towards the bank. And then I was like, yep, no, that's not happening. Turn around, and I went much, much further away. And I discovered I don't trust them. From the car, it's fine. And also, I mean, you can see, even in the water, just how big these animals actually are. I mean, look at those ones. Now, you can see they're staring intently. That's because Rowan is trying to track down the lions as we speak. And he's walking along that side of the water hole. And you can see the focus of the hippo. So the water it's the hippo's safe place. I mean, this is where the hippos go when they feel threatened. They run into the water. They know in the water they can beat pretty much any animal. So what they're doing is they just want to protect their safe area. And that's why they will stare very intently at anything that comes down, especially something unusual like a human. You know, if it was an elephant or a giraffe or an impala or something like that, not a problem. You know, they're not going to pay it any attention. But because it's us. Oh, there we go. So those look to be fairly small for hippos. And I would wager all of those three are females. There is a big male that is dominant in this water hole, but I think he's a bit further off to our right. And so the male is here, and he will stay in this water hole. It's a perfect water hole, nice and big, keeps water most of the year. But we've got a question from Sophie. Sophie's living in India, and Sophie wants to know how old a hippo can get. Sophie, most of these hippos, they'll live maybe 35, 40, around 40 years old. A hippo in a good area, I guess, where we have consistent water holes and that sort of thing, they can do about 40 years. Out there with sort of the rhinos, elephants a bit older, 60 years, but they're up there, right near the top of the lifespan for animals. And you'll see, I mean, a hippo like this, even the females, when they come out of the water, very few things can hunt a healthy adult hippo. You saw that one yawn, you saw how big its mouth is. They've got thick skin. Something like a lion struggles to actually bite a hippo. The hippo is just it's like a wine barrel. You can't bite a wine barrel. Your mouth doesn't open wide enough. Did you hear that? You can see the one there was making a little bit of noise before he came up to breathe. I don't know if you heard hippos before. Very, very loud noises. Hopefully we'll find the lions. They're not too far, I don't think. We'll hear the hippos calling tonight. And very, very cool sound. Very loud. But while we continue our search for these lions, what we're going to do is send you across to Taylor, who's in the Pridelands, with some hyenas.
managed to find those lions. Now, this probably looks a little bit familiar to you. We're at the hyena den on Pridelands, and there was one cub that came out and has now decided to disappear to the other side of the den, which is problematic because I don't know if we're going to have signal on the other side. Then there also isn't an established road just yet, so we still need to try and figure out if we can even get a view on that end. But there's the main entrance to the burrow, one of them, and then there's one on top as well. Ah, there he comes. Ha-ha! Hyenas! Finally, I've been absolutely dying to show you these wonderful creatures that move around here on eco training and come into camp and do all sorts of naughty things. Now, this is one of, or the most I've seen of 4 cubs at this den. You can see with a long shaggy coat, they're not particularly quite young, and they do wander a little bit further away from the den. So I think with a fluffy coat like this, and you can see they've got all their spots, although their spots aren't prominent, they're slightly blurred. I would say that this one is maybe between 5 or 6 months old. And the others that are here are just slightly older than that. So they're between 5 and 8 months, maybe 9 months old, the cubs of this den. I haven't seen any smaller ones just yet. It's so precious, but they're very naughty, not very relaxed like the hyena at Djuma. They're still learning about the vehicles. But every time we do come in, we spend just a couple of minutes with them. They're getting bolder, and they're venturing closer and closer to the car. Now, if you have been watching, hyenas are notorious for being very relaxed around vehicles, in fact quite naughty and like to chew tires and brake pipes and mud flaps and all types of things like that, so we're trying to not teach them any bad habits. But I think because they didn't get experience with cars from a very, very young age when they're completely black in coloration, because that's what color they are when they're born, they just keep their distance. They come about 1 meter or 2 from the car and then they look at us. Maybe this one will come on out. But I hope that some of the adults come around too. This is the time of the day that they normally come on around. Go fetch your friends. I also haven't been able to sex any of the cubs because they've either been laying down and have not been showing their appendages, which is really the only way to sex them correctly. But I have seen one female at the den, and I think I told you about her. She has a blind left eye, and then I have what I'm pretty sure was one of the males come round as well, one of the older males. But we'll see. We'll be patient and hope that they come out. Digging over there, you can see all the dust. What have you found? So the reason why I think that they are this age, I could be mistaken. Oh, there comes another one out the den. I don't think that they're very young, because normally when they're quite young, their coats aren't particularly hairy. They're quite smooth. So they start out quite black in color, and then they start developing spots around their face, and then their neck, and then their shoulders, and then down towards their hindquarters. And that sort of stays quite smooth to about 4 months, and then they start to get these shaggy coats. And then from about 8 or 9 months old, so they're not quite as big as the adults. You can see they're still fairly short, but by about 9, 10, 11 months old, they're maybe not quite 3/4 of the size of an adult, but fairly large, in fact. Just plopping themselves down. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Let me try go a little bit further forward for you, Gert. Is that all right? Yeah. You're all right. You're just having a drink of water. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start the car. I hope that the signal holds, but we can't view them at the moment, and they look like they've settled down quite nicely on the other side of the den. So I'm going to poke my nose forward just a little bit. It would be nice to try and establish a little road, quite a big loop around. And then, there we go. I think you can see them now. We go a little bit further forward. Sorry, everybody. Ah, thank you, hyenas. You're getting very relaxed now. They kind of look turbed when they if accidentally drive over a little branch and it crushes. You can see that one does not look impressed at all. Welcome out, little one. Still exhausted. Last night they were making all sorts of noises, not too far from camp. And definitely when I seen their tracks early in the morning, or either from early in the morning or the night before. Some youngsters are following the adults out because there's always much smaller tracks. But I haven't seen all the members of this clan. This clan hasn't got a name just yet. So I don't even know how many there are. So we've still got to figure all these things out, which is quite exciting. You can get that nose just so precious. Look at those big ears. Right, we'll sit here for a bit longer. But just before the sun sets, it seems as though there is a wonderful animal that we don't always get to see at Phinda.
So we're still waiting patiently to see if these rhinos are going to head a little bit more into the open to show us their calf. The direction that she's heading in at the moment, I think if she maybe takes maybe 20 or 30 steps to our right, so in front of her, we might get a fairly good view of that calf. But Marcel, if you quickly zoom in, just behind her rear end, you might be able to see the two ears of that calf busy sticking out.
Got it.
Marcel says he's got it. Great. And from here, from my angle, those little ears look like bunny ears sticking out of the grass. And it is always very cute with rhino calves how the ears seem far too big for their body. Now earlier on it was bouldering around and busy playing and got all excited. I'm hoping it's going to do the same thing shortly. So Julie, in the natural environment, the biggest threat to a rhino would be lions. Probably not to the adult that you see with the calf, but the youngster to her right. If that calf was by itself and there was a large pride of lions around, or if that tiny little calf somehow got separated from its mother, it would most certainly be in the realm of danger from a pride of lions. There we go, you can just see the calf again, sticking nice and close to mom. Just like those cheetah cubs we saw earlier, I don't think that this calf is too used to seeing vehicles yet, and so it's still a little bit nervous having us around, listening to me busy talking. That's why I'm trying to talk as softly as I can and sticking nice and close to mom. At this age, it will have already started to nibble on some grass, but a majority of its nutrients is going to come from the rich milk that it would suckle from its mother. And they suckle for a very long time, anything from up to a year, sometimes even longer than that. I've seen a rhino calf of about 1.5 years suckling before. You'd imagine it's quite a bit more difficult for an older rhino calf to suckle, so they'll have to wait for the mother to lie down. I'm just going to reverse a little bit back. I know these 3 rhinos are just behind one little bush. Just going to go maybe 10 meters back, if my car will start. There we go. Starts a motor issues. Right. Marcel, give me a thumbs up when you're in a good view there.
Like this.
Right, so Marcel says got a good view. We've got a bit of a gap. So I think if she takes 2 or 3 more steps forward, we should see the calf quite nice. You see the calf is sitting on the far side of the mother. That is very typical. See how she's busy chasing that other rhino away. And so, like I said earlier, I think that this is her old calf. And around the time that she gives birth, they will generally kick out their older calf because of the potential injuries or threat that calf could pose towards her calf. And I'm sure in the next couple of days, that calf is going to catch the hint and go in search of some other rhinos, and it will be known for what we call a satellite calf. So it may go join up with another female with an older calf of around 6 months plus. It won't be able to join up with a female with a calf about this age. Oh, there she's in the open. It looks like a warthog. It is so tiny.
I'm wondering, at what age would they get their first dehorning? About?
Their first yawn?
Dehorning.
Dehorning. So Marcel just asked me now, at what age would we dehorn the calf? So generally we would dehorn the calf with the mother, but we would wait for the calf to be around 1.5 years old. Ideally closer to 2 years, but at already 1.5 years old, that horn is long enough that a poacher could potentially want to get its horn. So that is around the age that, oh, there we go, chasing it away again. You see her calf walk too close to that young male. She's not happy, she doesn't want it around. And there she went to chase it. I'm not sure if you could hear it, always interesting sounds that rhinos make, never the sounds that you would imagine. One of them being the calf. When the calf wants to suckle, it makes a sound that reminds me of a kitten or a whale. And if I have to imitate the sound of the baby calf, it would go something like this. And that's often the sound that they make when they're busy begging for milk. So hopefully we get to see that. A, it's suckling, and B, making that sound. But while we wait, let's head over to Tualu.
So we're just scanning here for aardvark, but I really just want to share this landscape with you. And this time around, I'm not going to say much. I'm just going to let the landscape talk for itself. Just watch this, enjoy it, and appreciate it. That's absolutely magnificent. Anyway, I think let's head back to Lowveld. I think it's in Gala, and let's see what they got on that side. We're going to carry on.
Well, we're not in Gala, a little bit south of that, but all okay. As you can see, we're at the hyena den. Ribbon is here, and so are the two little ones. They've just emerged for an evening drink. Well, I say just emerged. They got a bit of a fright because an impala snorted at them, and then they ran into the mound and have come out. And you can see they've grown a lot, haven't they? If you think about when Lauren first found them a few weeks ago, they really have become much taller, much longer. Even their coats are starting to fade a little bit. They're not as dark and brown as they used to be. They're starting to get that more kind of spotty appearance coming through. Now, the view of them when they're suckling is not going to be too good. But the nice thing with hyena cubs is that they generally are quite active. And so they move around a lot. So, Rishan from India, you're asking about litters when it comes to hyenas and how many they have when they have a litter. So, maximum of 2, Rishan. Excuse me. They have a maximum of 2 at a time, and that's because they only have 2 teats. If they had to have more, then, well, there would be too much competition for milk, and one of them would end up not being fed properly and wouldn't work. So just 2. Sometimes 1. It can happen, particularly very young and very old hyenas. Same as when you see it with a lot of lions and leopards, cheetah. When they're young and old, they tend to have smaller litters. And then when they're in their prime, bigger. But 2 is a very common thing to see with hyena. Most of the litters we see here typically are 2. And so these 2, I'm not sure if we've sexed them yet. They're quite tricky to identify whether they're boys or girls when they're small. As we know, females do have an extended birth canal or clitoris that is basically looks like a fake male genital, and so it can make it really tricky when they're young to actually see before their testicles drop a little bit. So one has to look very, very carefully at the end of their phallic organ to be able to see whether or not it's a boy or a girl. If it's got like a sort of rounded bell shape to it on the end, boy. If it's just straight, girl. So that's the way that you tell between the 2. But they, at the moment, like I say, are just having a bit of milk. Now you'll hear every now and then you might hear a snort. That is an impala that is alarm calling. Now, the impalas typically don't alarm call for hyena, but what I think is happening is that they're actually seeing the car parked here, and because of, I think, most of these impalas were tormented during the course of last night with all the leopard movement. There was a lot of leopard movement where we are now. Maybe that scent is still lingering. So the car, mixed with the fact that they can see something spotty on a mound, is maybe why we're hearing them snort every now and then. It's not something you normally hear for hyenas. They generally don't really pay too much attention to them. So I think that's more what's happening in this particular instance. But I've been giggling at the impala that's alarm calling because it's this big ram and it's got this weak call, so it can't get the air out. Shame. So Gabriel, who's in the UK and is 11 years old, you're asking about set breeding seasons for hyenas. So the thing about a lot of the carnivores particularly is that they don't have set breeding season, and that's because food is available all year round. Whether it's summer, winter, doesn't matter. Oh, here's another hyena. Listen, listen. You see that one is pasting now. So this is how hyenas mark territories. They do what's called anal pasting. So they have a little gland underneath their tail that secretes a little paste on grass, and that will tell other hyenas who's here, whether it's male, female, and whether they're territorial in the area. And you can see the little one's excitement to meet somebody else. Mom is boring compared to visitors. Now you'll see that hyena's cocked its leg, and the cocking of the leg is to allow the little ones to smell its genitals, and this is the equivalent of a handshake in humans. This is how they communicate with one another and greet each other. So by smelling, they're able to work out, okay, I know you, you're part of the family, you're part of the clan, and therefore everything is okay. So you'll find that they sniff each other's genitals. When this hyena arrived, you saw it sniffed Ribbon's genitals, then went and pasted, and the cubs... Oh, what's wrong? But just back to the denning and in terms of breeding seasons, what you'll find is with any animal that can find food all year round, look, the cub is mimicking. You see? It's also pasting. They will breed at any point, just like I say, because there's food all year round. Your seasonal breeders are generally your herbivores. So they're trying to feed, or trying to have young during prime times of the year when food is at its maximum availability for that young one, so that it can grow quickly and strong. Something like buffalo and an elephant are a little bit different because they spend time in big herds, and because they travel quite big distances, they generally can find food, and so they'll also, even though they're herbivores, breed at any point in the year. Isn't this cool? Always nice to get interaction at a den, and it's nice that there's another hyena here, because this certainly will mean that we'll get maybe a little bit of vocalizing just now. You can see the cubs have woken up a little bit, so it should be really, really exciting. And it's going to be amazing to watch the journey of these little cubs as they grow and get bigger. And if you want to watch that journey, we're going to need your support to be able to continue. This is obviously an amazing experience, not only for us to be out here, but to have all of you along for the ride. And so your support is vitally important for us to carry it on and to be able to watch these little hyenas as they develop and grow into little monsters, because they will be little monsters soon when they start coming and terrorizing our vehicles. But talking about hyenas, it sounds like Taylor up at Pridelands Eco Training is got hyenas of her own, and I wonder if she's got cuteness overload like we do.
We do, and the other two cubs have finally come back from wherever they were wandering. Now, this is exciting. The hyena that's standing up at the back has, well, got its appendage hanging out because it's come up and said hello to all the other hyenas. And from the quick look that I got, that looks like a female hyena over there. Now, we'll try and get a closer look as they start to wake up. There's lots of rustling in the distance, so I think that one of the adults is laying not too far away from here because the youngsters keep poking their heads up. But in case you are wondering, perhaps some of you that are on social media could make images of the genitalia of a male and female spotted hyena. Now, I know it's quite bizarre to stare at body parts like of animals, but it's of course very important, especially for trying to figure out the dynamics between hyenas. And this is the first proper look I've had of these young cubs. So I think that was a female, just because the elongated clitoris, that would be, I suppose, the penis, it doesn't taper down and then go wider at the sort of the tip, I suppose you would call it. Sorry for my use of terrible words. So the other one is coming out now. Hopefully it comes out and says hello to the other hyenas, and then we can have a look. And this one was sort of very much the shape through and through. So that should suggest to me that if I am incorrect and you all managed to get a screenshot, please let me know. It's been a long time since I've been able to sit and watch hyenas. But it is nice that Tristan and I are both able to put hyenas on screen, and it's nice to have a new clan and to learn about all the dynamics here. Come on, move out from the bushes, please. Of course, they've gone round the corner where we can't see them. Typical. No, Jogs, this is what we're trying to figure out exactly, is how many hyena clans are here. Right now, this is the only den that we currently have. But there are a couple of other very well sort of used den sites, but we think it's the same clan of hyenas that has been using them. The chances of there being maybe one more clan of hyenas, potentially, maybe just north of us in Jajani, I think, and they could run this side. But it's so difficult. I mean, we need to try and establish this family tree before I can start. I mean, we're in a big open ecosystem. But I think on Pridelands itself, I personally think that there's one clan here, because you hear them in the evenings. You hear the calls, and obviously from camp we can determine direction, and we know where this den site is, so we hear them, and then you hear them slowly moving. In total, I'm just trying to think in camp when they come in, because typical hyena fashion, they come and they raid camp every now and then if somebody's left a tasty morsel out when they weren't supposed to. And I've seen 3 adults running around, or what looked like adults. So we shall see. I'm just happy that we've been able to see them now. But we'll get to know these creatures even better and start taking photos and ID them this way. Anyways, we're going to say goodbye to the hyena and send you off to Ngala and see what's happening down there.
So, yay! We managed to find the lions. They're looking very lazy. Very, very lazy. But what they did is they crossed over the wall. So for those of you that were watching this morning, you saw that female take the cubs and they cross over the dam wall. So the rest of the lions have done that as well, and they are now lying in this beautiful little patch here. But you also notice how they're all lying in the open. Just a side note, you can see we are in black and white. We are in night vision mode because the sun has set and it's starting to get very dark this side. So that's why the screen is like it is. But what I was saying is, so we've got 13 lions here now. So we're missing one of the Ross males. So that's the one that you can see there. Then we're missing the other Ross male. We are missing the young Birmingham male. And then the female with the 2 cubs. Those 3 are missing. So we're missing 5 in total. We've got 13 lying out here, which is still beautiful. Nice to see them. Now that it's cooling down, you can see a slight bit of activity on the ones that aren't in the screen. But it's because they're full. I mean, remember this morning we were looking at their stomachs and saying how full they were. They had already eaten. That eating makes them extra lazy. You know, they've got no reason to really get up. They don't need to go and hunt. They don't need to look for opportunities. Young male's getting a bit restless. I think he's got a fly that is bothering him. You can see he keeps sort of swatting and his tail keeps flicking. But I was hoping that they were going to roar, at least the Ross males, because of that other pride that we heard this morning. We just need to know where that other Ross male actually is. I think he's close by. So while we watch these lions sleep, we're going to spend probably the rest of the sunset safari here, watching them sleep. So while we do that, we're going to send you across to Tswalu Kalahari, where they have a beautiful sunset happening.
A spectacular Kalahari sunset. Yeah. Absolutely nothing like it. Still just scanning for aardvark. And obviously also looking for any other signs that are not tracks. Magnificent, like simply magnificent. Doesn't need words. Wow. So we're going to carry on enjoying this and enjoying trying to track down an aardvark for you. But in the meantime, head over to Njuma, and they got some hyenas.
We are in infrared. It's gotten dark now, and so we obviously don't want to put lights on the den. Den is a sensitive place, and so lights and too much kind of distraction around here can often attract the attention of other predators. So sitting quietly in the dark with infrared is fine, but obviously don't want to be shining lights all over the place, as well as the fact that the eyes of these cubs are probably still very sensitive, so you don't want to be blinding them. Have gone to lay quite far from where these ones are, and they're very tentative to venture too far down to where the adults are. So the adults are just down at the bottom. I didn't want to move because then they're going to go flying back into the hole, and we're not going to get really too much of a view of them. You can just see, I think it's Intima that's lying closest, and Ribbon to the left. It's difficult to make out behind all the bushes. You can see her just straight through there. I think that's the arrangement at the moment. And then the cubs are kind of slowly coming down, but there's one that's far braver than the other one already. It's kind of moving about. The one is very shy to come off the mound. So I don't know how much they've actually ventured away from the mound in their little life so far. But slowly but surely, Mom will lie further and further away, and eventually they'll get used to this life of moving and coming out from the den and kind of moving about and playing within a bigger area that's or circumference around this particular den. So it's going to be cool to see that. But like I say, they become little terrors when they start doing that, because then everything is a toy, so including your vehicle. And so you have to constantly, when you're at these dens with little ones, when they start venturing, you constantly have to be on the lookout for little troubles that are potentially biting tires or pulling at cables underneath, biting your brake lines, all those kinds of things. You're going to constantly kind of keep them away. Luckily, there's only 2 of them here. Sometimes you go to dens and there's 6, 7, 8 or more. Then it becomes really tricky to figure out where they all are at once. So we should be fine with just these 2, unless, of course, Intima potentially starts to have little ones as well. Now, we're in IR with our hyenas. They're milling about and generally not making it easy for David. But it sounds like Steve has got himself an animal in IR as well. Hello, everybody. Having a standoff. A young elephant bull. He's very, very relaxed, though. He's been very relaxed the whole time. That moment you came to us, I think he was listening to some conversation that was happening amongst the rest of the herd. He's busy feeding on the leaves of a red bush willow. This goes to show you how late in the season it is already, and the red bush willows have still got full of leaf. They normally should have no leaf by this time. He's thinking. See that? Hello, sir. Isn't he wonderful? He's probably about 20 years old or so, maybe 22. Within that range of 20 to 24. It's not the easiest thing to tell. Hello, David. You want to know how do the animals stay warm in the winter? Well, some of them will go into burrows in the ground. Some of them have got very thick skin to help them with that. And they've all evolved, actually, for a very long time to live out here. And it doesn't actually get that cold. As long as the animals aren't moving, it's not really that cold here. But also, because all the mammals, they just feed on food, and that helps with the metabolic energy. That helps to warm them up. But if anything, it's the heat of the day that they have more issue with than the cold. If it's cold, they will just start moving as well. So lions and leopards, if they're chilly, just go for a nice long walk. It always helps to warm them up. It gets much colder over in Swalu Kalahari, though, than it does here. So the adaptations of the animals there are a lot more profound with regards to... Oh, there we go. There he is. With regards to them definitely going under the ground. They have to go under the ground in the Kalahari at night because it gets very cold. But here, there's still lots of vegetation, lots of grass, so it actually holds the heat. Hello, do you want to come shake? He's a wonderful fellow. I love spending time with elephants. They're always busy. I think he's listening to my stories now. Aren't you, sir? Yep. Very relaxed. You can see the eyes are half lidded. Hello, Dove. Top speed of an elephant and a very fast walk. Yeah, what we call the charging speed for an elephant is 40 kilometers. I think it actually might be 45, somewhere between 40 and 45 kilometers an hour, which is quicker than you or I. Usain Bolt, the fastest man in the world, goes at about 37 on a track with his running shoes on,
peak physical condition, no bushes in the way. 37. Elephant goes 7 to 8, maybe even 10 kilometers faster. So there's no outrunning any animals. Very good. Okay, well, he's looking to nibble on a small acacia now. So while he does that, let's go over to Anbion and Gala with their flat cats, who hopefully will be getting up soon.
So you chose the perfect time to come. We have a little bit of activity. That's pretty much what we saw. He groomed himself. He did stand up very, very briefly, and then he lay down again. But it was still awesome to see. As I said, I mean, they're just really lazy because they've eaten. And there's just not much for them to be doing. You know, they also have the entire night ahead of them. You know, these lions will now sort of start to wake up and then be awake until what, like, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, depending on, you know, what they're doing and what else is happening throughout the night. They'll spend the next few hours up and waking up. They'll move a bird, lie down, move a bird, lie down, that sort of thing. But while we've been here, we haven't heard any noises. You know, there hasn't been a contact call from that other female with the cubs or the other Ross male or anything like that, which I think is a little bit strange. You know, I thought at least one of them would be calling out. It is very, very cold. Now, we've got one rolling over down at the back. He's already rolled over, that one there. But the rest of them are looking pretty dead. Which is not, as I said, it's not... Oh, that's exciting. While we watch the sleeping lions, sounds like Taylor has found a bush baby. I'm going to send you over there.
Oh no! Where are bush babies? We've got 2 bush babies bouncing around in the bushes. Ah, there they are. I see. There's the eyes. Okay, we're looking. You have to bear with us. They're playing games. Of your screen. Hello, little one, and it's grooming itself. I say little, but these mammals are quite small in stature anyways. You can see it. Just licking itself. So it's probably living in one of these knobthorn trees that have a nice cavity that's hollowed on out. And during this crepuscular period, when just as the sun drops behind the horizon, that's when they start their day. Which is quite cool. Sorry, everybody, for the cell phone doom noises. Oh, there they are. Look how cute that is. There they are. In center frame. Sorry, Chad just trying to answer his phone with a call dropped. Look how curious they are, though. Sorry, he can't find his phone in his pocket. The bush babies didn't really seem to mind. They actually quite like the tune of the cell phone making noise. This is just, of course, a way that we communicate with the directors that are feeding us all your wonderful questions, so please keep sending them through. Now, this is one of the 5 primate species that we see in southern Africa. Oh, a big yawn. They seem to have lots of luck with animals yawning and exposing their tongues. Don't think I've ever seen a bush baby tongue before. So we get the greater Galago, which is the bigger bush baby. I apologize, I'm trying to rest my arms on something so that I can hold the spotlight nice and still. That should be a little bit better. And then we also, of course, get the chukma baboons, we get the vervet monkeys, and the samango monkeys as well. Now, I haven't quite worked this out if it's a male and female, or if it's a female and an infant. They look fairly similar size, don't they? What do you think, Kat? We shall see. But it's really nice that they're so relaxed, and they're not very far from the vehicle either. And this is one of the special sightings in the bush. And I think it's really wonderful that all of you back at home watching this really get to see it, because when you're out on safari, it's very difficult to get close-ups of bush babies like this. Normally, if they are too close to get a decent picture or a view of them, you know, they'll bound away from you and you can't see them. Look at them. Stuck in bed? Well, at least you're watching WildEarth, so it's not too bad. In terms of the size of these lesser galago or lesser bush babies, they're quite small. I would say with their tails, maybe the length of a ruler, not particularly big at all. So they're quite small, and their tails probably just about the same length of their body, maybe even a little bit longer than that, in fact. But I like the fact that they just sort of sat there grooming themselves. I don't think I've ever been able to watch bush babies groom themselves in such detail. They're quite meticulous, but all animals, including the avian species, take a lot of care in keeping they'll keep their feathers in check, and this lot will keep their fur in check too. So I hear a turtle dove calling in the distance, but confused now that it's almost full moon. So they'll be removing all sorts of things, little parasites and mites. Also just making sure that their fur is nice and clean, cleaning those nether regions too. I hope that we get to have a look at what their feet look like. They've got very, very interesting feet. And now you're going to hear cell phone ringing again, Gert, so get prepared to answer the call. Sorry, Gert's probably just going to maneuver his hand in his pocket because you're going to hear the dun 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 very soon. There we go. Coast-sided, yes, bush babies do indeed come into our camp. The other night, I heard one land on top of my tent. I got such a fright. I think they use the tents as trampolines, which is rather entertaining. Sorry. So they do indeed. And when I was at one of the other eco-training camps, they're sort of common visitors, and there was a Tumbuti forest, which is a type of tree not too far away. So camp was quite dense, and they were living in a hollow in one of the trees. So pretty much if you sat around the eating tables early in the morning, having your tea and coffee, you'd see them coming back out from a night looking for delicious things to eat. This time they're going to start to eat sugary things, so they'll be feeding on gum off of trees, because the insect population, which is what they normally feed on, well, has dwindled, you know, as winter comes along and things start to dry out and it starts to get a little bit colder. But yes, and they're quite easy to habituate. They become very relaxed. But another creature of the night, of course, is the lions at Ngala.
Okay, so look, there's a bit of activity there. It's the most we've had all night. So you'll see it is getting extremely dark here, but what I have is a little red filtered light, which is, I'm just shining on the ground, actually right next to the car, the vehicle, which is just providing us with a bit more light so that we can actually see the lions. See, that's one of the youngsters now. Just seeing to look for a better spot there. So it actually moved onto the grass. So it moved from the sandy area out here onto a grassy patch. Perhaps the grass is a little bit warmer. You know, that sand is cold. So it could be that he's just moving to get a little bit of warmth. Let's see the rest of them. It looks like they have no intention of doing anything at all. The Rossmail at the back, I would have thought he might have a bit of activity, but I don't know exactly where he is. There he is. Just not doing much. Where is he there? But still, I mean, you know, a lot of people, that's what always, you know, a lot of people find they don't realize when they come to Africa. You know, we get a lot of guests that come and I'm like, okay, so, you know, what do you guys want to see? What do you want to do? And I'm like, oh, we want to see lions. We really want to see lions. And lions are fantastic, even like this. You know, even just resting like this, they look just powerful. I mean, look at that female's head. just the size of the head, the bulkiness of these animals. It's still intimidating, even just like that. But a lot of people don't realize that lions sleep like 90% of their lives away. They're sleeping 16, 18 hours a day. And that means this is what you see a lot of the time. But when you see it in Africa, yeah, what I was saying, when you see it in Africa, it is just incredibly special. But we have a question from Dylan. Dylan's wanting to know, do lions ever eat grass? Dylan, sort of, yes, they do. It's not like, not as a meal. But you know how your dog, if you have a dog at home, if it's got a sore stomach, an upset stomach, what they would do is they would eat grass. It helps them, well, it makes them vomit. And lions will do something very, very similar. If they are feeling a little bit sick, upset stomachs, that sort of thing, they will eat grass. They will chew on a bit of grass, and that will cause them to throw up and hopefully get rid of whatever is upsetting their stomachs, whatever that may be. So in that sense, they do eat grass, but they don't walk around and eating grass as an actual meal. And also sometimes you'll see in the winters, because you must remember here that in Africa, well, at Angola, winter is our dry season. So a lot of our water holes, a lot of our small pans, so small little puddles, they dry up. So early in the morning, it's very, very cold. There's a lot of dew and a lot of mist. And the lions will actually go, not just lions, leopards, all animals will actually go and lick the grass. They will lick the grass, they will lick the plants, the leaves, to get those drops of water. And they can actually get quite a bit of water by walking around and doing that. And they're not actually eating the grass there, they're just sort of licking it to get those droplets. But lions, yeah, mainly 98% is meat. 99.8% is meat. So we're gonna spend some quality times with our sleeping lions. And wait here, just in case there's a bit of activity while we're waiting here, we're going to send you back across to Tswalu to have a look at the moon, which apparently
we're just looking at beautiful halo around the moon. We've got some very, very high cloud that's come in. It's typically associated in this area with a bit of a cold snap. There's no forecast for any particularly cold weather. I think from the 12th onwards, it'll start cooling down. But I mean, just look at that with that glow around it. That's very, very, very high cloud. Ice crystals, they're reflecting the light. We haven't had much joy with our artwork search this afternoon. But it's been really, really, as always, a really good privilege having you all with. And yeah, I just couldn't think of a better way to spend the afternoon. And look at that sky. Just, you don't get better than that. So while Jandra and I start wrapping up on our side, great having you with. See you all tomorrow. And I think head over to the Lions and have an amazing evening or day further, depending where you are. I guess you're all stuck with me for a little bit longer. I love it. No. Yeah, like I was saying again, it's a real privilege to be able to spend time out here and have you all join Jandra and myself on this, and obviously our colleagues in the other places. And just please join us again tomorrow. Ask questions, get involved, And yeah, we're all in this together. It's a wonderful journey we're on, and like, yeah, we couldn't be happier to be able to share it with you and just be out in this magnificent environment. Have a lovely evening and see you again tomorrow.